On today's episode, World's Toughest Mudder 2021 recap with Carlo Piscitello.
This is the World's Toughest Podcast. Welcome to the World's Toughest Podcast, where we talk about any obstacle course race you'd like, as long as that's World's Toughest Mudder. Each week we talk to members of the WTM community and share stories of success and failure in the single greatest event in OCR. My name is Will Hicks, and this is the World's Toughest Podcast.
Welcome back to World's Toughest Podcast. My name is Will Hicks. Thank you for listening. You are listening to a live recap with Carlo Piscitello from the World's Toughest Mudder community. If you are signed up for World's Toughest 2022, you should join that community. So what you didn't see, because you're listening to the audio, what you didn't see is I just put on my bib during that exciting intro. Josh Chase says, I almost didn't make it. I almost didn't. I have to get used to putting on this brown bib. It's a lot different than putting on the white bibs, isn't it, Carlo?
Absolutely.
Elliot says it's a good color. Thank you. Thank you. Very proud of it. Carlo and I are going to talk about World's Toughest 2021, recap it, talk about my race, talk about his race. Going to kind of talk through the course. If you were not there, what you missed, and every year kind of has inside jokes, I feel like. There was like the Rubber Duckies, 2019. 2018 had the ice storm stories. 2021, Carlo, what would you feel like the biggest inside joke of 2021 was?
Oh gosh, we hadn't even got into that yet. The biggest inside joke?
Because I think for me,
dude.
I would go with the tortoise stories, the tortoise warnings. Kyle, multiple times during the race briefing, I guess we were on federal land. The race is on federal land, and there are these tortoises that are protected. Yep. And so multiple times, Kyle's like, if you see a tortoise,
like six of them, right? There's like a family of six.
Yeah, I think that's the impression I got, is like, it's not like there's tortoises that live out here. It's like there's a family of like six tortoises that are somewhere on these
like six tortoises.
Thousands of acres. If you see them, don't touch them. And they had like a 6-page tortoise action plan. I was kind of hoping that someone would tell Kyle that they saw a tortoise at Fear the Beard. And so there would be some diversion around it.
Have to shut it down?
Yeah, but it never happened. So, year of the tortoise. Anyway, so...
The year of the tortoise.
And you know what? I kind of like doing this because we have the kind of live comments from Beth Amber and Jaleesa, Charles Halpert. Carlo, how was your race? How many miles did you get?
I got 55, and I feel pretty good about it. I felt better about it then. I don't feel quite as good about it now, in all honesty.
How come?
Remember, we've talked before about how in previous years I've finished, like a little before noon, and I was like, it's cool because I got nothing left, and had plenty of time to get an extra lap, but no way, I wasn't going to do it.
And you didn't have regrets looking back on that either. You're like, yeah, I know, but I don't regret it.
Correct. Yeah, kind of feel like I regret it this year.
What happened?
Not going back out and well, one, I had plenty of time. I had probably at least 3 hours to go back out and get one more lap. Turns out though, as I learned after the race, I did have a little bit of heat stroke. So I definitely wasn't feeling myself when I came back, and I actually almost got really sick there towards a while I was waiting for others to finish. But just in hindsight, knowing that I had actually like walked a couple full laps and still did it in like 2 hours and 15 minutes. I'm just finding myself going like, could you really? Like, you couldn't have just shuffled one more lap and gotten 60, So there's just a little bit of that that I had not had in previous years. So
what is your...
Nothing you can do about it now.
What's your most miles? What's your record?
50 prior. This is my record. 55 is my record. So I got it, but I'm like, man,
yeah.
Couldn't I just taken a couple layers off, gone back out there, just sloughed along for another 3 hours, probably. So that part kind of sucks. But at the end, I loved it. I had a great time. And And I'm really glad that I was competing again because I missed that way more than I realized.
What was this you ran in 2021 this year? What was the last time you ran?
2017, the last year in Vegas.
So what is your plan for 2022? Are you going to crush?
2022,
are you going to crush the media coverage or crush the course?
Well, yes, I'll be on course. I'll be crushing the course. Sorry about your media coverage, by the way.
It's no. Mike did a good job on obstacle running adventures.
He did. Yeah, I agree.
There was a point for me. I finished with 50 and thrilled with it. Mm-hmm. I finished at 11:52.
Yeah.
So I didn't. I think my last couple of laps were like they were definitely. I don't know exactly. Definitely 2+ hours. So I didn't have time to get back around. I couldn't have made another lap. And I don't have any regrets about not starting a lap that I know I wouldn't finish. So I'm good. Like like my previous best before this year was 35. So and I've been like chasing it for 6 years, the 50. So I'm thrilled. I've never had. It was my best world's toughest by far. Like that wasn't even close. 2018 was second best, and the other ones are all. Blech. But there was a point at like I don't know 6 a.m. where you and I joked, or not joked. We talked about like don't do math when you're out there. Like it's loser math. You're just going to give yourself reasons to go slower. But I was doing math, and I'm like, we're on track. Like we're going to make it.
We do.
We're going to make it. And I was like, I want this to be over because you're miserable, right? You're 18 hours in or whatever. You're miserable, and Fear the Beard's around the corner, and I want this to be over. But I've been looking forward to it all year long. So, like in the exact same moment, I'm feeling these two emotions of misery and just joy, like at the exact same time. And it's impossible to. I'm talking about it, but I feel like I'm not describing it correctly. Like I was loving it and hating it in equal portions at the exact same time, and it was just a great race.
Yes. See, my race was kind of I broke it into two parts. So my biggest fear on the first lap was get through the lap before Mutterhorn opens. I just didn't want to go over Mutterhorn, right? So, like, I wasn't the only idiot out there, but there were many of us. Way too hot, and I didn't think I was running that hard, but I was evidently running hard. Plus, you're not taking into account how much extra you're working because of all that soft sand. I got done with that first lap because my thing was like, I'll get back to the lap, I'll do a quick pit, and just get out of here and get back on. I got back to the quick pit area where Cassie was waiting for me, and I was just like, I'm just gonna chill for a minute. Like, do you have any ice? Like, do you have any? Because I had one of those big floppy wide brim, hats, and I put ice in that. Like, I was seriously overheating. I was like, that was dumb. So, recovered from that, and then I just kind of went on and started doing my thing, right? Getting as many laps as I could before all the obstacles opened. Dude, I was dare I say, I was moving, but I was moving. I was at 30 miles. I have to look at it again, but I was at 30 miles before 10 o'clock. And I was like, damn, but two things happened. One, because I was a non-contender, I got to do carabiner stuff, right? So I started doing the hot sauce shots at the end of each lap.
Right.
You do a hot sauce shot, you get a carabiner, right? They kept saying that was Frank's Red Hot. Maybe it was, but dude, I would take that, walk back to my pit, and I felt like nauseous for like 10 minutes. Like it took me till like the half-mile mark. That stuff, it was worse than I realized. And I did it 3 times because I wanted, after the second one, I'm like, I'm not doing that again. Came back in and I was like, okay, just do it one more time. It can't be that bad.
Those hot sauce shots.
It was horrible.
The first time I did it, I did exactly what you did. I walked over to the timing tent, took the shot, got my carabiner, and walked back to my tent, right? And then you kind of do your pit and then get out of there. The second, after that, I would go to my tent first. Then I'd go over and I get like a Mountain Dew or a water or something so I could take the shot and then drink something normal. But no, it screwed up like the whole first mile after that. Like you couldn't, it was just... Oh. And plus you're already on sand, and it's the first mile and a half is just terrible. Terrible sand you're running in.
God forbid you burp at some point.
Melissa
You
Dugan's
just like,
Sharkbait says one of her runners threw up after the hot shot. Yeah, I believe it. And we, you know what? We thought about it. We're like, man, if one of the rules for that hot shot was if you threw up in front of them, you couldn't do it again. You couldn't do any hot shots the rest of the night. So Nate, the guy I was running with, we're like, don't throw up. If we're going to throw up, get away from the tent because we want that carabiner.
Yep.
The carabiner, if you don't know, there was a carabiner route that would let you skip 3 obstacles. The distance was the same.
Yeah.
But basically, you would just you'd miss Ladder to Hell,
Castaway, and
Skid Marked.
And the reason that I really liked having that is because when they switched Castaway to, was it Dong Dangler or whatever?
Yes, that was brutal.
That obstacle, that wasn't fun. I had to do that. Yeah. The one thing I wanted to say, so after that, what was it, 6th lap, I came back and I was just kind of standing in the pit, and Cassie was like, "You ready to go?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm ready to go." And she was like, "You okay?" I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "This is where having a quality pit crew is so important." Because she was like, "You don't look okay. Like, what's going on?" And I'm like, and I was like, I didn't even know. I guess my body language was just like, "Yeah." And it was, dude, I was not, and I know we're in a 24-hour endurance event, so forgive the terminology, but I was not enjoying myself. I was like, I'm out there and I'm not having fun. And it's great that I'm moving and I've got all these miles before a certain amount of time. But I'm like, I have anxiety about, is there going to be somebody at Dublin Walls to help me? Or am I going to have to like muscle over that thing myself? Can I do it? Because I have to complete it. And I had all this anxiety. And she was like, well, why don't you just wait? Because I was pitting with the Four Eyes guys and Amelia Boone also. And she was like, why don't you just wait for Casey and Joe to come back? Like, they're not too far behind you. And they've been asking about, hey, do we get to run with Carlo or whatever? So then I was like, oh. So I waited for them to come back. It was a much longer pit than I had intended. It ended up being like over an hour and a half, which I don't like taking that long of a break. But you know what? I went out and ran pretty much the rest of the event, except for my last lap with those guys. And it absolutely saved me because just running with the confidence of knowing, and we weren't like setting the world on fire pace wise, but just knowing that you've got people with you at every obstacle,
it can boost you up.
So even whether if they're not helping you or not, the fact that you're just going to be like suffering alongside somebody, it changed the whole thing. And it changed my attitude because I was really having a pity party. I was just like, everything sucks. And why do I do this?
If you
that's the exact sound.
Okay, don't let me forget. I want to talk about worrying about whether you can get over an obstacle, getting stuck at an obstacle. But do you think if you had not run with those guys, would you have made 55 miles? Like if you were by yourself the entire course, would you have been able to do it?
I don't know. It would have been tough because I would have been a pokey puppy the whole time, and I might have tried to convince myself of a reason to stop, I don't know if Cassie would let me, to be honest, because she's that good, but I don't know. Actually, I just know that I'm really glad that I did that. And it made all the difference. What it made me realize is like, if I do ever come into this race with like a larger mileage goal, I think I'm going to try to find someone who has the same goal and with the intent of not being a team, but running together.
Yeah.
Because having somebody with you the whole time, I think makes it so much better. And some people I was talking with Jake Ramsby and some other guys and like, oh yeah, I much prefer to run by myself. I'm like, good on you, dude. I learned that that's not what I want. So live and learn, man.
I have my team of 4 guys, and we signed up as individuals this year, but we kind of split up, except for 2 of us, me and Nate Swanson. And I would not have made 50 without Nate. Like just having someone next to you, even if you're not necessarily, a team, but you're right. You got the confidence. Right. You always have. I knew I always had someone who could boost me up a wall, and
yes.
Anyway, so it was worth having that person. Dang. Okay, before we start, I want to kind of talk through the course and for the people who weren't there and talk about what they missed. But before, I want to talk about just real quick a common. You know how we talk about our brain lies to us out there, like your brain is a liar.
100%.
Because one of the people I talked to after the course, they had 30 miles or they had 25 miles at like 9 p.m. and they finished with 30. And they told me, they're like, I was just afraid I'd go back out there and I'd get stuck in an obstacle. And I remember when my very first World's Toughest Mudder, the exact same thing happened to me. I got stuck at Royal Flush for like 4 hours. I got back to the pit at midnight or whatever. And I was like, I don't want to go back out. If I go back out, I'll get stuck in an obstacle. And That is it sounds like it's true,
Wait,
but
you got stuck at Royal Flush
in
Is that what you
2015, yeah. I told you the story.
15.
Yeah.
The tube that you went up with the water
like
coming down
Augustus Gloop's grandfather. Yeah. I could.
Yeah.
You know when you go up the ropes at Everest and you get to the top and you just can't quite. You're like, now what? I can't quite finish.
Yeah,
right?
because it was far from the end. Yeah.
So I got the same thing at Royal Flush.
I know-
Like I
okay,
got
I know
up
how
to the
you got
top,
stuck.
but I couldn't get to the top.
Yeah.
I couldn't get that last 2 feet. But a guy
There
eventually.
was no one there to pull you out from the top.
No, well, it's a long story. I don't want to get into it, but yeah, okay, yeah. So I got to Royal Flush. I couldn't get up there, and like my forearms are. I'm like, if I let go, I'm never getting back up here. And I let go, and I was like, great. So I like sat at the edge waiting for, and people are like, hey, you need help? I'll help you up. No. Eventually, a guy he's like, no, I'm gonna get you up. Let's go. I'm like, no, get up.
Those are the best.
Right. And I don't even know this guy's name. I don't even know this guy's name. My very first, he saved my race in 2015. Saved my race. I finished with 15 miles, but
we all know that guy. We've all experienced that guy on course. We all
Right.
know, or girl. We know that guy, that person.
So my point is,
God bless them.
When you are on course, or if you're back at the pit area and you start thinking, I can't go back out on the course because if I do, I'll get stuck in an obstacle and I'll never make it back to the pit. That is your brain lying to you.
Yep.
There will be someone who comes along who will I can't get through Block Ness Monster by myself. Well, not everyone can. That's fine. But you'll get there, and maybe worst case scenario, you wait, and a group of 4 guys shows up behind you, and all 5 of you get through together. So anyway, don't.
Yep.
It's a common lie your brain will tell you. Anyway, anything else you want to talk about before we talk about the race?
I was all about it. What's that?
Anything else you want to hit before we talk about the course?
No, it's several. You don't want this to be a 4-hour podcast, but we'll. I can talk. So
if you guys have questions or comments,
first review, I'm excited about that though.
If you guys have questions,
I got a lot to say about certain obstacles.
Jalisa says, Charles Hopper says his brain does that all the time. Jalisa says, I was never waiting an obstacle more than 2 minutes this year. That's a good point. Because of the weather, it didn't turn early into a ghost town at like 3 a.m. like it usually does.
No, there was a decent amount of folks. Oh, I did find times when, well, we can get into that when we get closer to the obstacles that we're going to talk about. But
Jake Ransby has a comment about an obstacle. We'll talk about when we get to that obstacle. Okay, so the course started at the start line like it always does. It's a 5-mile looped course.
it's a good place to start.
20 obstacles. But actually, you know what? Even before we talk about the first obstacle, talk about the terrain from the start line to obstacle 1. What did that look like?
Well, that was a perfect little precursor to I think how everyone's day was going to go. We were like, man, it was like beach sand. It was beach sand, and it was like a mile of it, I think, pretty much before you, or a little less than a mile before you saw the first obstacle. I guess they say they put 2 obstacles in that first mile, but the GPS was a little off. But yeah, and they took you up that ridge line, and you just kind of did a little up and down and up and down. I mean, you were going up and down, but slowly. There was more up than down, so you were definitely gaining elevation, right? I think the peak was 6. I don't know what the actual highest peak was. I can't read it from here, but yeah, it was. I mean, it wasn't single track, so you had some room, but and at certain points of the night, you could hear the Darius Rucker concert. Did you catch that?
Yeah, Okay, so during the night, you'd be on the course. There was an open air Darius Rucker concert, like literally a block away from the venue, so you could hear that concert like for 3 hours, and then you could hear. At the start line, you heard Coach and Clinton and their music kind of going at the festival area. And then you heard Coach at Coach's Canal underneath Mutterhorn doing his like a DJ EDM party show. And then when you were in the right spot, you could also hear the Mini Mutter course playing Let It Go or
that's right.
Baby Shark
Wheels
or
on the bus.
Barney.
Yes.
So there were like 4 different soundtracks going on most of the night that you could listen to while you were running.
Yep. That's true.
That first mile and a half was miserable, man.
But yeah, so yeah, and then you come the kind of the one of the interesting themes, especially on the back half of the course, which we'll get to, but there's certain parts of the course where it was like you went up a hill, you went down a hill, and you did an obstacle. Then you went up the hill, and you went down the hill, and you did an obstacle. And you went up the hill, and you went down the hill, and you did. But yeah, that was so basically, yeah. Once you kind of climbed to the peak, you wound your way down a little bit, and that's when you ended up. Actually, no, I'm sorry. You kind of came around that corner, and Megamire was there. Which Megamire, I mean, it was a big hole in the ground you had to crawl into, and then or not even crawl, you walked into it, and then used the rope to get yourself out.
I
don't know of anybody who probably had trouble with that.
I think the plan for Megamire was for it to be muddier. I think the plan for a lot of those obstacles was for them to be muddier. Mud Mile and the barbed wire crawl or roll. But from honestly, and even watching the recap video at brunch, like those obstacles on the brunch, I didn't even see some of those obstacles because they had mud in them. And Kyle told me that like they would put the water in there and the dirt would just suck it out. Like it would just like a sponge, just the water would be there for 5 minutes and then it is bone dry again.
I was wondering about that because, if you don't, in the desert, if you don't line it, if you don't put a liner in it, like what's to think that it's not going to just get absorbed? So I'll be honest, I was grateful because and we'll get to it, but like Kiss Down Under was the third one. That was just like, we're good. But yeah, so Megamire, nothing. I mean, did you have any trouble with it?
No, that was literally, there was like, I don't know, three or four obstacles that were kind of a gimme, right? And that was probably the easiest of the obstacles. After Megamire, there's more up and down, and then get to Dublin Walls. And that was kind of, I feel like Dublin Walls was right at the 1 mile mark, right? Like where that timing that was?
Yes, that's correct. In fact, you crossed the timing marker on your way to it. Which, did you find it weird at Dublin Walls that there was just a random gravel patch there? Did a gravel truck just have extra and just dump it there one day, like 50 years ago, and it's just been there forever?
That you're running in sand, like literal beach sand for 1.5 miles, 2 miles. You do 1-2 obstacles.
Yep.
And then you're in like a gravel driveway, like for
like 40 yards.
Yeah. It's okay. All right.
And that's it. And then it's gone.
Yep.
Like, who put this here?
That's kind of weird.
I'm sure it was there long before the obstacle. But so yeah, Dublin Walls was basically a standard 8-foot Tough Mudder wall with a what do they call it? Not a French table.
Irish table.
Something table.
Irish table.
Irish table. Thank you. Wrong country.
Dublin.
Yes, yeah. Irish table. Which early on I was like, right on. When I'm I can do muscle up, so I would just jump 2 hands up, kind of go put your feet against the wall, kind of give yourself a kick, and up to my chest, elbow, leg, no problem. And that I was good on that obstacle, probably like without help, probably 4 or 5 laps or so. Then started like you get that one where then you have confidence, and then you have one where you almost slip and slide back, and that gives you the so yeah. But then again, having friends with you, or in one case we ran into Joe Herman there, who was just kind of being a bro. He'd already gone through the obstacle, and he was like, climb on my back. Dude, he did this thing. Bless Joe Herman. He would get on all fours. You'd climb on his back. And then as you pull yourself up, he would stand up and transfer you to his shoulder. And he's like a 5'6", 5'7" guy. And then you were automatically at waist high, and you just went over the wall. And it was just like, could you please be here for the next 7 hours, Joe Herman? Because that was awesome.
We need to buy shoulder pads for all those guys.
But there's people like that all night, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Todd Hayden comments, that used to be called T-Bone. Yeah, I was actually one of the first toughest Mudder exclusive obstacles. Was they would take the Berlin walls, make them a little bit harder for toughest Mudder when they started.
Yep. That's right.
After Dublin Walls, there was more running, and the next obstacle was Kissed Down Under.
Yeah, Kiss Down Under was, again, you kind of ran down into a pit, right? But then when you came back up, you were basically doing like a barbed wire crawl, right? There was water in it at some point. I actually saw pictures from the photos that Jack took. It looks like early in the race, when they were like filling it with water, they had the water truck come and just like start spraying people as they were going through it.
Right.
So that looked like fun, but especially during those first couple laps when it was like 4,000 degrees. But yeah, that one was, that was another one too that got really rutted out. So it wasn't even much of a crawl. I mean, I basically walked into it until it finally got to where I had to hunch, and then I just rolled through the barbed wire or under the barbed wire, and up you went. It was just that one. I just got dizzy because I don't like rolling.
I'm usually more of a crawler.
I'd roll.
Okay. Yeah.
Yep. Oh no, yeah. No, I crawled the first couple times and then I was like, and I had elbows and knee pads, which by the way were golden. Elbows and knee pads were the way to go. If you didn't have them, I'm sorry. But yeah, then just doing a nice slow roll turned out to be easier for me. Just gather my brain at the end, like wait 30 seconds to, get my bearings and then get up and go.
That roll, so basically the first half of this, barbed wire crawl was like a hunch, and then you go sideways and you can roll out. And that roll actually felt so good on my back, just to like give those muscles something to push against. That anyway. The most interesting part of Kissed Down Under to me was the front half of it was held up by a front end loader for all night long.
Yeah, I was wondering, was it starting to sink in or something? Is that why I was wondering about that? Yeah, it was like a backhoe with a strap, and they basically suspended it, kind of.
Yeah, and it was.
I always wondered if like maybe it started sinking into the.
I don't know what the whole story was.
For the soft sand.
Man, that looked sketchy.
Yeah.
Maybe what it was when they added the water, it destabilized something. I don't know. But it held up. There was
my ankles.
As far as I know, there was no danger.
Dude, that was the theme. I mean, the extra stabilization that our bodies needed to do, like our ankles, that was. I mean, my ankles hurt more at this event than they've ever hurt any other thing I've ever done, and I think it absolutely has to do with that soft sand. Your body's constantly catching you, going like, "Hey, ooh." So yeah. Let's see, what did we do? Oh, and then then we went. Okay, so you run. Then you're running for a while, right? That was the third obstacle. You run for a bit, and then you come to Pyramid Scheme. And this is, by the way, this is kind of when things you're getting close to where the course, because the course is definitely a tale of two halves, right? The front half and the back half were dramatically different.
Yep, 100%.
And temperature-wise too. Definitely hotter on the first half of the course. Even though you had a little bit of wind, it wasn't the same. Like that's where people were really overheating, I think. And I hope they spent a lot of time with that watering hole. But Pyramid Scheme, which was not bad, right?
It wasn't. Once we figured out
it.
Yeah, once we figured out that you could just kind of run up and grab the rope, like because the first lap or two, everyone's doing the whole it's just laying on your back and then helping someone get on top of your shoulder, like Pyramid Scheme used to be, like when it was first introduced 5 years ago. But after a while, we figured out, everything's super dry. You can just run up and grab the rope, and that kind of was a game changer.
Yes. In fact, we had a great system, Casey and Joe from Four Eyes. And it's funny because if people weren't doing it, we were trying to like, hey guys, go like this. So you would basically, one guy would run up, get the rope, right? Grab the very end of it and stand up. And then you just extend your hand back for the next guy.
Yeah.
Or girl, pull them up, give them the rope. Then I would go up, And so it's basically whoever the bottom of the rope person hands off to the next person, that guy goes up, the next person. And you just do that until you run out of people. And then the last person just pulls themselves up and you go. And it saves that weird, because I'm a shorter guy. So a couple times I'd go for it and slide back down. Didn't quite get it, or my foot slipped or something.
Sure.
So again, another Tough Mudder obstacle that favors the tall. So
it's hard to have an obstacle that favors the short. I don't know how they would even do that.
Yeah, you know what? We'll get to this, but the bouncy ball penalty, they're like, short people have it easy. It still sucks. I don't care who you are. And I will tell you when we get to that, I will tell you about a major mistake that I made at that penalty. Stay tuned after the break. Let's see. So the Pyramid Scheme. Yeah, then you ran. After Pyramid Scheme, you had that kind of flat, like, track where you just ran and ran and ran. It seemed like a mile, but according to the map, it's only about a half mile. And that's pretty much where you went, and that's where you hit the water station, just after the 2 mile mark, right?
Yep.
You kind of went out. You ran like forever to the west, and then you made like a left, and you ran forever south, and then boom, you're at the water station, which had water and that electrolyte tub. Did you have any electrolytes there?
You know what? I did not hate that electrolyte stuff. I drink that almost every lap. Yeah. It was like a little.
I drank it because I needed it, but
I'm not going to drink
one glass of water, 1 or 2 glasses of water. I went 1 to 2 glasses of water and 1 cup of electrolytes.
I would hit like 2 of those electrolytes and call it good. I mean, it was kind of sour, but it was like.
And that bathroom.
I didn't ever use that bathroom there.
The bathroom was a good location. So from there, this is of course prior to the carabiner bypass for those of us. Then you went right after that. You went to Castaway, which of course,
well, before Castaway, though,
the recurring theme of this year was like, what's that?
Before Castaway, though, was
Ladder to Hell. I'm sorry.
And Ladder to Hell, they took
and Ladder
out.
to Hell, that's what I meant.
They took out the bottom step, which was It's not as. I don't know. You needed it, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
It wasn't, but that's kind of a reoccurring theme this year. Was they like the obstacles that are kind of difficult to do, where you always have a little bit of a foothold, like Pyramid Scheme or even the walls or this one. They were just like, no, we're just going to go ahead and get rid of that.
Yeah.
And you're like, son of a what? So, but it wasn't that big. All it meant was I had to just kind of jump up, put my foot on it, right? And that gave me enough to reach to the next one up. And it just means that when you're coming down the backside, you just make sure and land, with both feet even. That's all. You got to be a little more mindful of your landing.
Ladder to Hell had barbed wire above the top step. Is that new?
Oh, that's right.
I don't remember that ever before.
They added that for this. Yeah, Sean or Kyle said that at the Friday night briefing.
So when you're going
barbed wire.
When you're going over Ladder to Hell, you can't sit up on top of the top step. There's barbed wire 3 feet above the top step. So you have to kind of roll over the top, which is kind of how I get over anyway. But
it wasn't so. I never once got caught on it.
Yeah,
you just have to know it's there, and that was the only time, by the way, that I saw Jim Campbell. I saw him at the top. He was taking a selfie at the top of Ladder to Hell. Of course, he was. With his actual camera because he's 600 years old. But and that was it. I never saw him ever again. So I don't know whatever happened to the guy.
I saw him at either Skid Marked or Dublin Walls. One of the walls. He helped me over a wall. So Jim Campbell, the GOAT, one of the only people to run all 10 Tough Mudders in person.
That's right. Then we went over to Castaway, which here's something about Castaway. I noticed, and I get this from looking at the photos. I think Castaway is a fun obstacle, whether you're going by yourself or going with somebody else. And to me, it's relatively simple. Sit in the middle of the buoy, and I know Ann Clifford got a pretty nasty cut on it. Actually, I'm not sure exactly how that happened, but she got kind of messed up on it, but on her hand. But and you shimmy across, but some people have a really hard time with that. If you look at the photos too, people are maybe leaning too far back or falling to the side, and it's one of those ones I don't quite understand. Everything's different for everybody, I guess, but that one I was, the first part of the night I was happy to see that obstacle because it's kind of fun, and it takes the weight off your legs, right? You get to sit on something and be buoyant and just kind of mosey for 2 minutes.
Kind of like bouncy ball.
Not even close, pal. Not even close. How are you on that? You're cool?
Yeah, Castaway's fine. Okay. I'm looking forward to bouncy ball discussion. After Castaway was Skid Marked. Skid Marked, they took away that bottom step like we talked about. Skid Marked's an incline wall, so it's leaning toward you.
Yes.
Pretty kind of a standard. We've seen it in a lot of courses.
Yep. That one I found to do it right, I had to kind of jump up with one arm or with both arms, and then in the middle of my kind of muscle up, I could get my foot on that one, the beam that's higher up the wall.
Right.
And once I got my foot on that, then I can kind of push and get my midsection over. And once you get your waist over, then you're like, all right, it sucks for half a second, and you swing your leg.
One of the rules they're real clear on is don't use the braces. The braces aren't for you; they're for the walls. And I thought that was going to be a bigger deal than it ended up being.
Yep.
But because I in the past, especially at Skid Marked, I think I like to use that brace to kind of
I absolutely do. Yeah.
Tripod myself up, but it ended up we had people there. It wasn't as bad as I thought.
And the other thing about that was another one of those obstacles where, and the community knows this. I don't know the guy's name, but there was a guy who I don't know his name, but he a couple different laps we came up and he was just sitting there on his knee with one knee up, come on, let's go. And he was there for a while. He was just helping people, giving them a knee to climb on and get over the wall. So he was kind of like an Everest Angel, but in the later hours for a pyramid scheme. So, and we took advantage of that.
Hey, before we get too far past it, we should actually go back to Castaway and talk about Dong Dangler. Should we? Or do you want to go back? Do you want to go around?
No,
again?
no, you're right. No, you're right. You're right. We should. We're not going to get back at.
Yeah. Kevin Chow like put dong dangler. Okay, so some of the so why were there 2 obstacles at that one spot?
So in the middle of the night, they changed it to what they called dong dangler, and basically what they did at that point was you got rid of your flotation device, and it was no longer a float across obstacle. It was a go across, like slide along the slack line obstacle. Now, has this person been identified? The most hated person in the history of the rules explanation?
We have. He has not, or it was. I think he.
It was a he. It was a he. We know that
he
much.
has not been identified, and I really think he should. If he has, he should stay anonymous. He should not.
Yes, it is in his best interest.
There were people sitting right next to him. I don't know where he was. He was kind of front right or off to the right. I was sitting back, and I heard it off to the right. It's in his best interest to be anonymous. I'm sure he didn't mean anything, and maybe this guy is a first timer, and he didn't know any better, and he just wants to be sure. And when you have uncertainty, you want to know for sure.
So what we're talking about,
but basically, yeah. The principle. Before you explain what happened, the principle is you don't ever ask the teacher if you forgot to give us homework. You never want to be that kid, and that's what happened.
Because the general consensus is if Kyle didn't mention it at the rules briefing, then you can do it. Pretty much.
He gave very detailed rules for everything.
Within reason.
So if it's not covered in these very detailed rules, it's probably legal.
Yes. So now, again, like I said, I was with some of the the Four Eyes guys who, some of the old timers as far as OG guys who've done, the New Jersey days. And they were excited because that's easy because you climb on top. I forget what they called the obstacle. Ann will know. People in the comments will say what it was called.
Tyrolean Traverse.
What's that?
The Tyrolean Traverse from Spartan.
Is that what it was called?
They used to have it. I don't know if they still have it or not, of course, but yeah.
Anyway, but the idea was you go on top of the slack line and you cross your legs and you just pull yourself across, and it's seemingly pretty easy. And all was going well, Will. All was going well. And then we were about to move on to the next obstacle and talk about the rules. And this aforementioned person was like, really quick. So do we go on top or underneath the slack line?
Or it was can we go on top or do we have to go on bottom?
Yes.
And everyone's
yeah. Joe Van Dyke was like, what is that guy doing?
Kyle even he consulted, I don't know if it was the race director or he didn't make the ruling himself. He consulted his rules guys or his team. Javier says it's him. I don't think it was Javier, but
I don't think so either. Although, hey, really quick, speaking of the rules briefing, can we just talk about how on point Kyle was with his incessant jokes about Spartan and Joe DeSena all weekend long, and Will Dean?
I have never seen him,
punchy, but playfully. But it was I love gloves off Kyle. And you can tell he's comfortable with, what's Joe gonna do? He'll be like kettlebell or whatever, who knows? Anyway, I don't want to lose the momentum. So I'll tell you this much: the biggest bruise I have on my body from World's Toughest Mudder is on the back of my right Achilles area, which is where I had my right leg over the slack line, my left leg on top of it, from where I would shimmy myself on the dong dangler.
Did you make it across dong dangler?
Yeah, I made it across 2 or 3 times. 3 times.
Geez.
I did it twice. I'm never doing that again. And then I was I didn't want to give up a band.
Yeah.
Or my carabiners before my last lap. And I was like, all right, one more time. And the last time I almost didn't make it.
Right.
I was done. Did you do it?
I did it and I fell in the water. I was there are 2 techniques for doing it. There was the lock your legs in and just pull yourself across. Mm-hmm. And then there was, you kind of take your hands and your legs and you're walking both up, your arms are doing this while your legs are doing the same thing at the same time. You're kind of crawling across the bottom of the rope.
Yep.
And it was middle of the night and I was I made it 5 feet and I was nope, not happening.
I did more of the inchworm approach where I would get my arms, I would bring my knees up, pull my knees up to my chest, kind of with my legs crossed over the top.
Right.
And then crawl out with my hands and then pull. It tore my core up. By the way, important thing to note, and you know this because you had to do it. It was said that the penalty was a half a mile. It was a quarter mile. You had to go out a quarter mile, grab, I guess it was a glow stick or something.
They gave you a glow stick.
Yep.
At Dong Dangler. And they said,
okay, so they gave you a glow stick. You had to go out a half mile and you had to exchange it for a different color one. Is that correct?
That is what they told you. Absolutely.
And then you came back.
Yes.
Now, one of the times that I was going through, Austin Miles, I don't know if you know Austin, but Austin Miles was a volunteer there. Shout out, Austin. And he was like, hey, man, you really don't want to fall off this obstacle because I walked the penalty with my GPS watch on. It's 0.9 miles. I was like, I'm sorry, what? They said half mile in the brochure. And he said, no, dude, it's 0.9 miles. So I was like, I'm not doing that. I don't want to add any more. So you did it. So tell me about it.
It was a long penalty. They give you a red glow stick and they say, okay, they kind of point out the route. There's, it's marked. And you go to Pyramid Scheme, back to Pyramid Scheme. And there's a volunteer there who's going to give you another colored glow stick. You exchange them and you run back. And there's a different route to run back. It's like, okay, so we're running and we were kind of running the whole course at this point, or more walking than running. But when we're like, oh man, we got to do, and he told us it was a mile penalty. And I'm in my mind, I'm thinking, they told us half mile. That's not right. And it was somewhere between half and it was probably like 3/4 of a mile.
0.9 miles.
Guys are saying felt like a mile long, bonus miles. Penalty at Donglanger felt like it was 17 miles.
That's probably right.
So then you get to Pyramid Scheme and you realize there's no volunteer here. There's no one to exchange my glow stick with.
Oh no.
So in the middle of the night, you're like, what am I supposed to find a glow stick? Is there one around? So I didn't know what to do. So I went up and I just like slapped Pyramid Scheme, turned around and went back. But so I get back to Pyramid Scheme or back to Dong Dangler and I have the glow stick and I'm like, the same red glow stick. And I'm like, yeah, there was no one there. He's like, yep, that's correct. I'm like, you son of a. So
he knew?
Yeah, oh yeah, they knew. Everyone knew except the dummies doing the penalty. So.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Anyway.
Oh, that's awesome. So okay, well there we go.
Anyway, so that's Dong Dangler. So after that, I was like, yeah, we got to get some carabiners. We got to sit in the ice water for 5 minutes because I don't want to go do that.
Oh, did you do that? I couldn't do that.
I did do that. It was and I did it. I did it twice, and it was worth it.
Okay.
So
I got all of my. I'm gonna punch somebody when it comes to those stupid duckies. We can talk about that when we get to.
Yeah, that was a scam. That was a scam.
That was a total scam, and they lied to my face, Will Hicks. They lied to my face.
All right, let's get to it. I want to talk about it. Yeah.
All right, so we talked about skid marked. Okay, this is my favorite. So let's see, where are we? Let me look at the map. Okay, yeah. Okay, so
coming up on Mud Mountain.
So Mud Mountain was one of those ones I just kind of kept forgetting was even an obstacle because
was it Mud Mile? Was that what we're talking about?
Basically, Mud Mountain, but
just alongside.
Because there was supposedly a big mountain in the middle, but. And I remember saying like after lap 2, like, oh, this is going to get so rutted later. Dude, it got rutted in like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
And I thought for sure they were going to like move the tape. So you had to like push you more to the center. No.
Ooh.
It was basically like it was great. And I kind of chuckled every time I went through it because I was like, thank you. Yeah, keep doing events out here. Like,
thank you, Laughlin.
I'm already worried about that obstacle for next year because there's going to be actual mud and terrain that retains water.
Yeah.
So, because it's Florida, you dig down 2 feet, you're going to find water. Anyway. So yeah, Mud Mountain was nothing. And then, and that was one of those things, even if you weren't running at that point, the stretch between Mud Mountain and the next obstacle was that little soft downhill at first.
Yes.
It was a big, wide lane. And I was just like, oh, this is nice. And dude, okay.
Some of those downhills, you could just bomb down them. They were soft. They just bomb. You felt like Javier Escobar flying down the mountain.
So this is an important transition to me. To me, the course completely changed like character between Mud Mountain and the next obstacle because you got to the bottom of that hill. Then you had to go up a pretty good hill. Then down a little hill, and then up another big hill. Sandy, soft, loose sand. But when you got to the top of that hill, especially after dark, first off, you could see the beautiful horizon. You could see the casinos and everything. But at the bottom of that hill were the big spotlights and the big sombrero of Mike Jones, right? Which that part was great. And I'm like, yeah, my boy Mike Jones. And you went down that soft, but that's also where cage crawl was. And that was kind of a precursor for the whole second half of the course, which was like, here comes the wet, cold portion of the program.
I totally agree with everything you just said, except I did not dread cage. I looked forward to cage crawl because it was the first water obstacle on the entire course. And you're literally 2.5 miles through the course now. Maybe even you're almost to the 3 mile mark, according to the map, at least. Yes. And you've been hot. At least me, I was hot the entire first 3 miles, just hot, just overheating. And especially the first time I got in cage crawl, it was just like so nice. Like you just laid there for a second. It was now it got cold after that, but
yeah, see, yes, you're right. Early on, that's how I felt. But in the later nights because there was also wind in that over that area, and it was just like, yeah, it was one of those. That's kind of the thing for the whole race was like, I never wanted to go to a wetsuit because I knew how bad those first couple miles are going to feel in a wetsuit. And I didn't want to have to go through that just for to save me the second half of the course.
It was really weird. This was almost like a reverse of what a usual World's Toughest Mudder is. You want to get as many miles as you can in during the daylight because overnight everything gets really, really cold and you slow down and you can't get miles overnight. But this year, It was so hot during the daytime. It was reversed. You wanted to get all your miles at night because as soon as the sun came up, it was going to get super, super hot and you're going to get super, super overheated. And that first 3 miles is going to kill you every single lap.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the cool thing was though also, and this is where the volunteers are so great because like, even if I was feeling great or not feeling great, it's always fun. And if you see Mike at an obstacle, you're going to see him there all night long. And he's just he gives the best hugs, and you're just like, let's go. So yeah,
Mike's one of the good ones. Love me some Mike Jones.
We get wet, and they did a little thing where they were throwing the water. They had a little thing spitting water on you on top. Whatever, no big deal. Although, unless you had a buff on, if you had a buff over your mouth and you went through that, you basically were waterboarding yourself. So wet fabric over the nose and mouth isn't a good idea, folks. And then so after that, then you kind of turned the corner and started going up that little hill to Fear the Beard, which, okay, I get it. It wasn't staked down super tight, right? People are like, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. It was that bad.
Who's saying it wasn't that bad? Who's saying that?
It wasn't that bad because you could still stand up. And I'm like, it doesn't matter, guys. Like, did you have to go through it by yourself at all?
No, Mike Jones says his was at 2.66 miles at Cargo Crawl.
Did you?
No, I always had at least one person with me. Yeah. Sometimes it was just the two of us though. And no, I would say that was probably one of the worst. That obstacle was like on par with Lumberjack from 2018 World's Toughest Mudder.
There you go.
Like it was without a doubt the worst obstacle of World's Toughest 2021.
And while the concept didn't quite work, which I liked, because the idea was they're going to get kind of the tar and feather thing, where they got you wet and then they put you through that little patch of hay or whatever that stuff's called. That stuff got so wet so fast too, it never really stuck to you. Yeah. Plus you didn't. If you had somebody with you, you didn't have to really crawl through it. But I was there by myself on like 2 occasions, and it was just that uphill portion just seemed to take forever.
It started fairly flat, but then it got, then kind of halfway it goes uphill, but then it was like 40 degrees the last third, the last half of it. One time
you're crawling, you're pretty much you're like bear crawling it pretty much up that hill.
Yep, on all fours kind of. One time,
it's the only way to make any good progress.
We're going up, and me and Nate, the guy I was running with, we're going up, and we're about 2/3, 3/4 of the way up, and we see someone stuck, like just like a spider, like a fly in a spider web. Just like they're stuck, like they're sitting there waiting for some help because they can't. We go over there and like help them out, kind of like hold it up, and it's Stephanie Bishop. Yep. Like she was like stuck. It was before she dropped. She was still in first place, and she anyway. So she like thanked us, and then we're like okay, and so we're gonna like get to the top and see how she's doing, and then she just takes off running, boom, like a shot. So
that's what they do. Yes, those fast people. But so yeah, that was. I mean, yeah, I that was definitely. I stacked all my wrist because I was running with the 4 Eyes guys as long as I was. I stacked all of my wristbands for my last lap, and that was one of the ones that I definitely skipped on my last lap. And I flung that thing at him like he was like a stripper in Vegas. I was like, "Let's go!" There you go.
Okay, as terrible as that obstacle was, I never skipped it because, and here's my thought process, and I might have been wrong, but here's my thought process is, even if you skip the obstacle, you still have to go up the hill. So
No, dude, trust me, it didn't matter. I happily trudged up. I was like jolly, just swinging my arms like I'm not under there, passing people who are stuck like later, sorry guys, last lap, gotta go. But I can see where you come with that. Okay, so that's just past the 3 mile mark. Oh, okay. So yeah, then again, as is the case, you went up a hill, kind of walked around for a while, came down to the bottom of the hill, and that's where the gauntlet was.
This part of the course between 9 and 10, obstacle 9 and 10, this is where I passed you on that one lap. I don't know if you remember
that. Are you excited about that, Will? So
very
context.
No. I remember I passed you on course. You were going slower than I was, and I was going faster. That's when I passed you. How it worked? That's how it happened. I mean, that's what I remember.
That's how you remember it. That is technically what happened.
All right.
You can have that. I'll give you that.
Moving on. Next obstacle.
That's right. Next obstacle was the gauntlet, which
do you want to explain how I passed you? Right? Do you want to explain why I passed you?
Yes. So there is a sandy downhill section. I had actually just passed Will because I was still running at that point and he was walking, which is fine. We don't judge. And then on the downhill, Will comes like screaming, arms flailing down to the bottom of the hill. And you basically wait for me at the bottom of the hill. And I'm like, what's up, man? And he's like, I just wanted to say I could pass you on course. And then I continued on and you waited for your friend. So yes, you were, even though you were a couple laps behind me probably at that point, but you were technically ahead of me. You passed me on course.
And then yes, I passed you once, but you did pass me twice, like right before and right after. So yes, it's about even.
And multiple times through the night, but
maybe once, 55 and 50. That's pretty close.
Well, that's because I know. Anyway, okay. So Gauntlet, right?
Gauntlet XL.
Normally have it's Twinkle Toes, but they doubled up on the Twinkle Toes thing, right? They had the first free floating Twinkle Toes that would rock back and forth, which I was better at that than I ever expected to be.
I was really worried about that because when the first time we ran past it during the sprint lap, the Twinkle Toes was basically on a pivoting thing. I don't know what you call it, a rolling kind of base.
It was like a crescent shaped base.
And I was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to, and the first time actually was hard, but over time, over the 24 hours, sand blew up against those things. And so like the second one, I don't know about the other 4 or 5, but that number 2, it was basically solid. So you could jump on that one and it wasn't rocking like the rest of them were. I saw some people
eating it pretty hard on that too.
I saw one take a hit. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I went to the third. It's, again, you get kind of superstitious or whatever it is. The first time I went, the only one that was open was the third one in. And so I used that one. And then after that, that was just all I used. I was just like, nope, that's the one that works obviously for me. So you go up that part and then you go to the normal Twinkle Toes, which is just a more like rigid version. Right.
Yep.
And then that gets you to the first like little base. And normally they just have rings, right, that take you to the next step. But of course, because they leveled up everything this year, there was like Kong dog toys.
There were 5 holds. The first one was a ring. Second one was a knot. And like they literally went to a dog food store or a feed store to get these holds. They had the rings.
That is correct.
The second one was a dog toy with like the giant knot that you grab.
Knot, yep, the knot rope.
The third one was a long rope with a circle stool you could stand on or sit on.
Yeah, to stand on. Yep.
The fourth one was a bone, like a
femur,
like a cow femur, like literally from the inside of a cow, mounted for you to grab like a handhold. And the fifth one was a Kong with
actual Kong toy,
like a dog. You put peanut butter in or whatever, like a Kong, but through a rope.
Oh, there you go. Oh,
we're back.
I lost you for a minute.
I'm not sure where we lost. Anyway, the third one was that rope with a step. The fourth one was...
I was at Kong. The Kong toy is where I lost you.
Oh, Kong. Okay. Kong. The fifth one was a Kong, like a literal Kong toy with a rope through it that you grab onto. So I never made it through. I made it past Twinkle Toes almost every time. One time I was like, I just don't do the jumping jacks. But I did not have good luck on the middle section. You you could stay on the first step and grab the ring, and if you were smart, you could lean out and actually grab the second hold. So you grab the second one, and you have the ring in your first hand. So you're kind of swinging back and forth, doing this thing, getting your momentum.
Yes.
And so, but then I'm like, how do I get to that long rope with, like, when I grab it, like, what's gonna? I couldn't quite. My brain wasn't processing.
Yeah.
So I kind of like, I'm swinging back and forth, and I reach out with my backhand, and I grab the rope, and I kind of take my feet, and I trying to put them on the platform, like to land my feet on the platform with my right hand grabbing the rope. And instead of plopping my feet on the platform, I kind of straddle the rope, and then my arm slides down the rope. Oh, no. And so I just rack myself right in the middle and fall off on my side onto the mat. So,
oh gosh,
it wasn't pretty.
Yeah, no, I only made it across once, and that section, right? So, and I got to this. I was like the ring, and then the little knot, and then what I did as I was kind of hanging there, and I don't have the greatest grip strength, so that knot was not going to last long. Is my leg was just long enough to, when I swung out, to wrap it around the rope for the little platform one and kind of pull it towards me. And it was kind of it was going to be awesome, or I was going to fail miserably. I basically just grabbed the rope with my hand once I got it close, kind of almost jumped, grabbed the rope with the second hand, and just prayed that my feet, when they hit the base, hit evenly. And I was able to kind of straighten up, and I did, and I swung.
Right.
Like, okay. And then I just grabbed the Kong toy with one hand and just basically kind of leapt off to the next platform. But that was the only time I made it. Although now the penalty for that was interesting because
we should talk about the last section, even though we weren't doing it a lot.
Oh yeah.
It was just the tip. But they made a rule revision. You could use any part of that truss to get across. So people were able to grab onto the top of it. It just has to have an even surface. They didn't have to really mess with the doorknobs. You could also, which I don't think they've ever done this, you could use the truss that just the tip was built on. So it was basically like monkey bars, like narrow monkey bars inside. Chow was talking about that, and Todd Hain in the comments. So I saw Mark Battras 23 hours in doing it like it was nothing, and he was doing it he was doing the way they designed it, just the tip, boom, 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 straight across the front. So.
I mean, 115 miles, you're usually doing your obstacles pretty good, right? If you got that far, that guy, although, I mean, you saw it, that guy did, and maybe it's just his style. He runs like he's in pain. Like he is not an effortless runner. It's just kind of his posture. Obviously he runs well. Sure. I'm just saying the overall look was like, ooh, is that guy okay? Of course he is. He's going twice my speed.
He's 70 miles in front of me, yeah.
So I was really hoping, although, in hindsight, obviously it was never going to work. The first time I failed it, they had those hand-driven exercise, like the thing you'd rehab your shoulder with.
Sure.
And they had a dozen of those. And I remember thinking there's no way these things are going to last in this, because they were literally sticking them right on the sand.
Right.
Yeah. And so, I did it one time, and I had to go to 2.0, and it probably took me 3 or 4 minutes.
Sure.
And it felt like no effort, because I was just kind of on my knees, just rowing basically, or whatever, like doggy paddling is what it felt like.
Right.
And then you got to go. And then next time I came around, they were all broken.
Yeah. They lasted 5 minutes. Yeah.
And then it went to jumping jacks, which, all right, it was that obstacle. I never minded coming to after that, because I was like, oh, it's the 50 jumping jack obstacle.
Twinkle toes and 50 jumping jacks. I mean, if they wanted to be cruel, they could have done burpees instead of jumping jacks. But
I would have not liked that. How about that? Okay. Anything else you want to talk about on Gauntlet?
Nope. All good.
So, okay, here's something I wanted to talk about this really quick. So next, let's see, what episode that was 11. Where are we? Okay. So when you leave that, you go up the hill and kind of go around the bend, and then you come down to Funky Monkey. And I remember as I was coming down on one of the laps, because once you did Funky Monkey, you go right back up a hill, you're almost like ships passing in the night with the people who are going down to do it. And I remember thinking dude, what would stop somebody in the middle of the night from just cutting over right here? Course-wise, if they wanted to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I honestly think this had to be part of their plan, because at the bottom of the hill before you got to Funky Monkey was another timing mat.
Oh,
And so
sure.
that's what stopped people from. I mean, if someone was going to be nefarious. But I remember thinking, because I remember I was looking the first couple laps, like, I wonder if someone was going to be
you were looking
not
for
me, but I'm just, I'm just
sure,
my morbid curiosity was like, I wonder where someone would, and that was a spot where I was like, oh, how are they going to prevent someone from just cutting over in the middle of the night?
Right.
Oh, timing mat. So Funky Monkey was Funky Monkey, right? The only difference is they didn't have the horizontal wheel at the top, the flat wheel. They had the circus trapeze type thing, which I loved. It was super, and it was textured. It was knurled, so it was grippy.
You know what? They used to, a long time ago, they had a trapeze bar at the middle of, remember this? In the middle of Funky Monkey?
Yeah, the first Funky Monkey 2.0 or Funky, yes, or like whatever they called it.
When the first Funky Monkey used to be monkey bars up, monkey bars down. But when they got rid of the monkey bars down, I think that's when they introduced the
an actual swinging trapeze.
What happened
to the straight bar?
Was that what it was? It was just, anyway. Yeah. So, but this wasn't the same trapeze bar. This was basically a bar suspended by rope,
like
or
chain links. Yeah.
So it was a swinging bar, but it wasn't like the same trap. Like when I heard trapeze bar in the middle, I thought of the old one, but it's not the same.
And it was a smaller diameter, which was nice because you got a really good chance to kind of reset your grip on that thing and kind of hang there for a minute before you grab the big wheel. Did you make it through Funky Monkey?
Okay, so Funky Monkey is the obstacle where I hurt my arm right before 2019.
That's
so right. I did not, every time I got to Funky Monkey, I just jumped in the water, took the penalty. Like just I was like,
you got PTSD about it. You don't want to.
You know what? I don't know if it's PTSD or if it's just superstition or if it's just because my right arm, I hurt my right arm on Funky Monkey. It feels stronger than ever. And they said, the doctors told me it will be stronger than it was before because of the stuff they put in it. But they also said, hey, just by the way, it's probably going to happen to your left arm too. I was like, oh, awesome. Thanks, doc.
Just casually drop that on you?
Yeah. So my left arm is, uninjured and unsurgeried, but I just didn't want to get, I had a whole plan this whole year to not get injured, to get through 50 Worlds. So, I know I took the penalty every single time at Funky Monkey.
So this, of course, is this gets us to really what's bigger than this obstacle itself is the penalty for this obstacle, right? Which was the bouncy balls, right? Which they had in Seattle. They introduced it in Seattle, and it was a huge. I mean, it was a success in that it
was popular.
Buzz. What's that?
It was popular.
Well, here's the thing. I didn't ever do it in Seattle because I wasn't competing. I was covering. And all I remember is hearing about how torturous it is for tall people. So I'm like, oh, well, cool. I'm cool. Like, I'm not a tall person. This is going to be great. Well, it wasn't. And the reason it wasn't great is because they weren't the most overly inflated bouncy balls. So like a lot of times if you're trying just to pure use it as it's meant to be used, like you were going beyond 90 degrees of a knee bend, because that sucker would just sink way. It hurt, man. That thing, and it was long. It was like 30, they said 30, 35 yards, which doesn't seem that long.
They said 35 yards. It looked I think it was 50 at least. It was like at least 25 out, 25
each
back.
Direction.
Yeah, they could have been. Yeah.
35 out, 35 back. So you did that every time?
I did that every single time. The first time it sucked. The second through 10th times or however many times I did it, I figured out the technique and I was crushing it. I will challenge anyone, anywhere, anytime to a bouncy ball race. Like
we almost had our first nefarious word on your show.
I don't want to. I just challenged everyone to a race, and now I'm going to give them the secret. Okay,
give them the secret.
All right. Anyway, no, it didn't matter. Here's the secret. I'll tell you the secret, and then I'll beat you anyway. The secret is you let the ball do the work. Okay, you're literally it's a bouncy ball. You're bouncing. You have to bounce. You have your two hands in between you, and every time you bounce, you pull that ball as far forward as you can, and you take your body, and your body is jumping forward onto that ball. Like you're bouncing, so it's a little. It's not violent, but it's like you are pulling that ball as far forward as you can go, and you're jumping your body onto it, and you're landing on that ball, and you're hitting the bounce, and then the weight of your body, you hit the ball, you bounce up. While your weight is up, you jerk forward again, and you put that ball as far forward as you can, and while you're doing that, you're jumping your body forward, and you're bouncing on that ball.
But you're still pushing with your legs, though, right?
You are. but you're not pushing. You're not doing up and down, up and down, up and down. You're jumping forward, and it's much easier. Anyway, it was the first time I did it. I was just kind of like, oh, this sucks, and it did.
Yeah.
But once you're like,
it's like the bounce scooch, bounce scooch, bounce scooch.
Exactly. You got to like jerk that ball forward. Anyway.
I honestly kept waiting. I kept thinking, okay, at some point, most of these are going to go flat, and they're going to have to come up with something else. Now, so I didn't like that. I obviously didn't use the same technique you did. So at one point, later in the night, before the sun came back up, the volunteer was like, because Casey and Joe were good about, did you have a system for knowing which one you think had more air in it?
No, I just, at the beginning I just looked at, some of them looked bigger, but like as the night went on, there were only 4 left by the end of the day.
Pretty much.
And those were all bad. Yeah.
And one time we came around and the volunteer was like, all right, guys, here we go. Blah, blah, blah. Good luck. And I was like, cool. And he goes, actually, although if you don't want to do the bouncy ball, you can do a crab walk. Now, I, as a middle schooler, loved crab soccer. One of my favorite games we'd play on rainy days in the mini gym. Shout out Runner Park Junior High School.
They're not watching.
So I was like, oh, seriously? We can do a crab walk? And Casey Harris was like, ooh, I don't think that's a good idea. And I was like, no way, dude. This is so much better. So
describe to the people at home what a crab walk is.
So a crab walk is basically so you sit on the ground, sit butt on the ground, put your arms behind you, and then basically lift yourself up. So you're crawling on your hands and feet, but like looking up at like with your chest to the sky, basically. And you're just crawling, right?
Sure.
So I'm like all about it. I'm like, let's go. I'm going to crab walk. And you go backwards. You go head first. So I get in position, lift myself up. Dude, I get like 5 yards and I sit back down and I'm like, oh no. And the guy was like, once you start, you got to keep going. I was like, no, I can't go back. He's like, no. And I was told later by other people that they could. So that guy might have just been like, and I was like, and then I looked behind me because I saw another guy before I started who was crab walking. I looked back, that dude was stopping like every 5 feet. And I was like, oh no. So dude, I bounced every time after that. I was just like, okay, lesson learned. I'm an idiot. And that hurt really bad because everything was really sore at that point. And I just, yeah.
So penalties, we like jumping jacks, bouncy ball, crab walk. That's how we're going
to. That's the order with which, yeah. So anyway, okay, Will, we're about to move on to something. The next obstacle, which had far-reaching effects into this race, more than we'd ever know.
Okay.
So once you got through Funky Monkey, right? You went again up a hill, down a hill. Oh no, you didn't even do that. You just went straight up that little tiny, up slope, and you came to Slip and Squeeze. Slip and Squeeze is the one where it's the tarped area with the construction pipe going perpendicular across your path, right? You had to crawl under them. And I wanted to ask you about this because I could get under them pretty easily. It wasn't a big deal. And they greased at one point they greased the mat that you roll on, right? That you crawl on. I was able to get under it pretty well, except at the very end of the obstacle, the ground beneath it went up a little bit. So that last tube you had to crawl under got pretty tight. Now you are a little more barrel-chested than myself.
I'm a larger man than you. Yes.
How was that obstacle for you?
I did not like it at all. Charles Halpert's in the comments, like he's been talking about this one for like 10 minutes. He says it's the worst obstacle. So I went through it.
It's not a good round boy obstacle. I can tell you that. If you're a round boy,
I went through it 3 or 4 different ways. I started out because I have never seen this obstacle before. I don't know I think this is the kind of debut of it, right?
It is. Yes.
And it's basically you're going under these pipes, and these pipes are like weighing you down, and you're feeling at least for unless you're super thin, super skinny. It's like pushing, like physically pushing against your chest.
Yep. And they would pop up. They had some give, so they would go up as you got under them, but they're heavy.
Yeah. So I don't know why I started this way. I saw someone else doing it, I guess. I would go feet first on my back. And so because it was it was very slippery at the beginning.
That. Yeah.
So I went feet first on my back, and that way you could kind of push yourself against the pipes as you're going, like push backwards. And I was like, oh wow, this works. Okay, I'll do that. And then after a while, I was like, this isn't great. And what I did not like about that was sometimes you would have these tubes laying on your chest, and it's kind of. I'm not claustrophobic, but I don't like dark and confined spaces.
No,
and you have this pipe like weighing on your chest, and you're like, it's hard. You can't really get a breath in because you know this pipe is heavier, like stronger than the muscles to breathe.
Right.
And you just have to like think to yourself, I'm fine. I'm in no danger. I just have to get past this one pipe and get between two pipes, and then I can breathe again. But it like messes with your head a little bit. Yeah. Then I went later on. I went head first on my belly, and that was fine. It was just kind of like going through birth canal. You have something weighing on you. But the best way I found to get through it was to go sideways. And the problem with that was that you're blocking 75% of the people behind you. So you have to just kind of time it so you're not messing everybody else up. But if you do it that way, you just kind of like sneak through each one. The trick to this one, or the hack to this one, was to have someone on the outside pulling the tubes up.
I did see people like that. Yep. The other thing that we learned, I forget who told us on course, was, and I don't know how long it was like this, but if you went head first straight in and you went all the way to the right, there was more room on the far right hand side of that obstacle than there was.
I didn't try the far right one time.
The last pipe was still a little bit of a challenge, but not nearly like the rest of the obstacle. So once I learned that, they made it really. I mean, I'm not, I'm a narrow. I mean, I'm wide, but not deep.
Yeah.
I don't know.
People are commenting. It was in Central Florida last year, but it had water under the barrels. Had to help a few big guys out of it.
Oh, all right.
Variation of tight squeeze.
Variation of tight squeeze. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, Julissa said she only also saw it dry. I think it was slick the first, maybe the second time I was there, but they didn't add any more, vegetable oil or whatever it was to it, so it dried out by the end.
But I will argue that the oil that was taken out of there on people's persons definitely ended up in other obstacles.
It was all over the rest of the course and
created problems.
Okay, so talk about that. You said this obstacle affected the entire race, and
that's basically what and we'll talk about it. I think with the next obstacle too was so the next obstacle was Arctic enema or what did it says Arctic enema on the list, but what did they actually call it?
Arctic taint.
It was Arctic taint, right?
Yep.
So it was basically it was the 2021 version of Arctic enema, which was just climb up the little scaffold thing, slide in with no special anything.
You're sliding down like a white wall, like a
white wall, yeah, wall. like the opposite of hump chuck, right? A hump chuck wall, you had to slide down, and then basically you came out underneath like a devil's beard net. Well, which was then
that sounds scarier. It was. I mean, you slid in and you were in the regular pool, but then you had to crawl under the. It wasn't like you slid in and you were like under a net kind of.
No. You had to physically go across the water, or like wade across the water, get your head under the net, and crawl out using the ropes, the cargo net, right? And then you crawled for a while. Then it was tarped and strapped. Let's just like Devil's Taint in 2018 or 19. And then you came out the other side. Okay, I will say this really quick. First time I went through that obstacle, I was by myself, right? Our photographer, Jack, happened to be there, so that was cool. What I did not see was that Kyle McLaughlin was also over there hanging out, just watching. I did not see him because I was like, screw this noise.
Right.
And I was just waiting for people to be like, yeah, Carlo's going through demo, because that's a popular joke right now. I had nothing to do with this obstacle, by the way, guys. But anyway, this year. So I get through the regular ropey part and I'm under the tarp, right? And I've only went under the tarp one time in 2019 because they made me do it.
Right.
So I start going through and it's getting like really tight. And I'm like, there's no way this is how tight this is every lap. And then it gets tighter and I'm like, stop. And then it starts pulsing. And I'm like, mother. And And at one point, dude, it actually got so tight that like a little bit of air like squirted out of my mouth, like, and I was like, okay, that's actually not safe. Hold on. And then it completely loosens up, and I crawl back out. Jack's there taking pictures. Everybody's laughing. Everybody around is laughing. And I look back, and there's Kyle. And now I've seen pictures. He's like standing on the straps, basically, like right next to me, dude. Like at one point I was pinned there. And he comes up and I hug him. He's like, I just wanted to see, experience the fruits of your labor. And I was like, you almost broke my rib, but thank you. And it was all in fun, but I'm like, thanks, man. Thanks a lot.
So that obstacle sounded terrible the way you described it. And it was not great, but it actually got worse in the middle of the night. What did they do in the middle of the night? It
did. And this is where I learned about this after. So what they did, and they told us they were going to do this, is they changed the direction of the obstacle. So we had, which kind of reminded me of the old Upper Decker in 2015. Remember when they ended up they had to change that around because people just weren't going to make it.
Yeah.
Upper Decker was the one that was basically sewage outlet, but you had to go through it backwards and climb up a rope with rings on it to get into the tube out of the water. That's the one where Hayden Chavez became like famous.
2015, there was an obstacle. The one Carl was talking about, it was so hard, and so many people were DNFing out of that one obstacle and getting hypothermia. In the middle of the race, Tough Mudder changed it. They said, okay, go backwards through it. Yes. And it was still hard, but it was doable at least that way.
Oh, it changed. I thought I was going to DNF as well.
Now, this one was planned. They said we're going to do it in the middle of the night and change it.
Yep.
And then so going backwards through it.
Yep. So basically, you go under the regular cargo net, and then there's a little bit of water there. You crawl through that. You go under the tarp, come out of the tarp, and then under more net, into the water you go. But then what they did is they had ropes hanging down from the top of the Arctic Enema wall with like one ring at the bottom. And I don't know, bless someone's heart if they were able to get their foot in that thing and then get themselves up, because that was when I was so grateful that we were with a group, because we wouldn't have been able to by myself. I wouldn't be able to do that. There's no way. And the other thing, and this is where I was going back to the previous obstacle, is that wall had become really slick with the oil. And
from the previous obstacle. Yeah.
The grease, yes. And I talked to Kyle at the brunch, and I was like, hey, so what was the deal with the, because they eventually flipped it back. It only lasted, I don't know what the time was, but they only did this alternative version for a little while. Excuse me.
Karen says about 3 hours. It was the other way.
What they found, and what Kyle basically said was like, we underestimated how much of the grease was being carried into that obstacle, and it was making it unsafe because that wall was so slippery. It was making it really unsafe. So we had to flip it back.
So one thing when Arctic was going the regular direction, you pulled yourself out. There was part of that when you were under the top tarp, you were on top of another tarp, and you could kind of slide. And then you got to dirt, but you were still under that top net, and then you got out. So there was a guy, one of the guys that was running, he told me after the race, when they switched around backwards, he was going, he goes under the net at the start.
Yes.
He got underneath the wrong tarp. And so he's crawling, and he figures out like, oh my gosh, I'm under the wrong tarp. Like, I'm not going to be able to get out of this thing at the end. So he's like, how do I get out? Well, he turns around, and you're on your stomach. You're on your, and he,
so he was going to get wedged.
Everything's black. He's like, I don't know which way to go. I have no idea how to get out of here. I was like,
that's nightmare.
I was like, was that scary? He's like, oh, it was terrifying. He's like, I found a little hole and I'm sticking my finger out trying to like,
oh no.
And people are going over the top of them, and they're like, this isn't right. And eventually, those people get through, and they're like, hey, there's a guy stuck in there. It took 4 guys to go under there and get him out. Like,
grab his feet and just yank him.
I don't know what the exact process was, but that was terrifying to hear about.
Just hearing that scares the crap out of me.
Right? So,
I'm not claustrophobic.
Anyway, I don't know exactly how it happened, and I guess it didn't really play into the switching decision, but that's something we probably need to make sure gets addressed if we do that one again. So I did the one thing you could do at Arctic Enema was the carabiner challenge. And to get a carabiner, so you could skip obstacles, the 3 obstacles we talked about earlier, you could, if you stayed in the water for 5 minutes, Kevin, we're going to talk about it in a sec. You'd stay in the water for 5 minutes, just stand there, and you'd get a carabiner. So the first time we went through Arctic Enema, when it was only a certain amount of time, certain hours you could do it. So when it first opened, you just went. It was when Arctic Enema was still going the regular way. So we stood in there, wait for 5 minutes, just stand still, literally, and you're fine. The second time we did it, it was when it was backwards. So we get to the water and we're like, hey, we're going to do the 5 minute challenge. Start us as soon as we get in, and we're going to help people get up the wall while we're running. Our 5 minutes is running.
Oh, good multitasking.
So we got a couple guys up and out of it, but it was super, super hard. And then when our 5 minutes was up, we get up and we barely got out. I barely got out of that. It was so we ended up using our bands on that. We came through one more time when it was still open, used the band on it and kept going.
Yeah, I didn't like that. Okay, let me think here. Look at the course. So of course, the other thing, of course, at one point of the night, you could bypass Arctic Enema and the next obstacle, which is Well Swung, which we can talk about in a minute, by doing Electric Avenue.
So you basically came to a point before Arctic Enema. There was a point where you could do 2 water obstacles, Arctic Enema and Well Swung, or 3 electric obstacles, which were the first one was Electric Evil, frickin' laser beams, and Shock and Sprawl. What did you do at that decision?
Well, if you know me, you know that I do not like electrified obstacles. And this is actually now Joe and Casey will this became a point of contention for us after the race because they don't mind doing electrified obstacles per se, and I don't like them at all. So when we got to Funky Monkey, when we got to Arctic Enema and it was backwards, Casey was like, let's just go to Electric Avenue. And I'm like, dude, I'm not getting shocked. I'm not. I'm like, you guys can go. And they almost convinced me to go. And then I convinced them and it sucked. And like, you know what? From now on, we're going. Because on course, we were hearing that like that freaking laser beams was like super hot.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, well, there you go. And it's like, and you can't just get through it as easy as you think. And because you hear all these stories, right, when you're on course. So I never once did Electric Avenue, nor did the guys. Of course, after the race, people are like, oh, dude, no. It wasn't even on for part. Amelia was like, it wasn't even on for part of the night. I went through with no problem. And the guys were like giving me stank eye. Like, we went up that thing backwards, but we didn't have to. So, yeah. So I never once went through Electric Avenue. How about you, Will?
I did not. And here's the deal. I was planning to do it once just so we could talk about it. That's literally the only reason. I was going to do it once. Then people were talking about it wasn't hot. But when it opened up, it wasn't open until, 8 p.m. When it opened, the first obstacle is Electric Evil, which is a combination of the Crybaby, the tear gas obstacle, and Electric Eel, which is my absolute least favorite obstacle I've ever done. World's toughest regular Tough Mudder. Electric Eel is you're crawling basically under barbed wire, but the wires, like short versions of the wires from electroshock, are hanging, and you're in water. And it's this obstacle, Electric Evil, was a combination of the 2 worst obstacles in Tough Mudder, in my opinion. And when it opened up, it was 8 p.m. It's dark. They're pumping all this gas in there, and it's 40 feet wide by 60 feet long, and the gas is kind of billowing out of the front and the back. It looked like a horror movie. It was terrifying. And I was like, I got to do it once just for the podcast. And then I saw it, and I was like, but do I?
It for the cast.
But do I? And really, I've been on this cryotherapy thing lately, and like cold water is therapeutic, and it's good for you.
Okay. Oh, you and Joe DeSena are bros right now.
So I did not do electroshock either. That one, frickin' laser beams looked fun. Like, you don't want to get shocked, but it looked fun. And the Shock and Sprawl, you and I have done electroshock therapy multiple times. Like, that's not that big a deal.
Right.
But that first one, Charles is saying the gas looked worse than it was. Man, I've done that. I've done the Crybaby obstacle twice. I did it. It was only in Tough Mudder for 1 year, 2016 or 2017. The first time I did it, it was at 2 different venues. The first time I did it, it was kind of refreshing. Like, you go through it and you're like, oh man, it's like menthol. It's kind of like Vicks Vapor Rub all over you. I got through it and I was kind of like, oh, that was, a lot of hype over nothing. It was kind of fun. And then the second time I did it, it was turned up or something. I get out, my hands are on my knees, I'm gagging. I thought I was going to throw up. My eyes are watering. I'm crying. So I don't remember the first good time. I remember the second time, and I saw this like billowy smoke, and I was like, "No, I'm good."
I had like one bad experience with it in Tahoe, but I mean, I usually liked it. It definitely like it let you knew where your scrapes and scratches were for sure. But yeah, I well, that's a story for another time. But yeah, I had really interesting.
Susanna Hicks.
So feedback from the.
Was that the Knight Rider theme?
That's my cell phone. I have it on Do Not Disturb, but I apologize.
Into your life there when your wife calls the Knight Rider theme goes on.
When anyone calls the Knight Rider theme goes on, I have it on Do Not Disturb, but my wife is in my favorites. Obviously,
she call you Michael in those private moments?
No.
Sorry, I don't know. Okay, so
you and I did not do it, but guys are talking about comments on Electric Avenue. The gas just smelled bad. Gas was just foggy. Didn't smell at all.
I was told you could crawl and shock and sprawl and never worry about getting hit. Like you could get through it okay without underneath the wires. Things I was hearing.
So evidently I should have gone through it at least once, but
yeah, Amelia said at one point, like she was going through and one of the volunteers was like, dude, it's not even on. She was like, you better not be lying to me. He's like, nope. And she was like, it wasn't on. So, and I was like, cause the other thing was there was a carabiner. Oh, by the way, a bone to pick with HQ about that. There was a carabiner challenge where you had to take a greased melon and go through, I think, shock and sprawl with it, right?
Right. Yep.
To earn a carabiner.
Yep.
And they called it manageable melon, which is a term coined by who, you ask, Will Hicks?
I don't know.
Me. During the 2020 virtual World's Toughest Mudder broadcast that we did, the 24-hour live stream, one of the obstacles you had to do was like do a wall sit with a melon.
Sure.
And the melon had to be of a certain size. Well, someone got the bare minimum size melon, and I made the comment, "Oh, look, there's Jake. He's got himself a manageable melon." And we all thought it was funny, and we laughed, and we made that joke all night long.
So you want credit for this one, but you don't want credit for Arctic Taint.
Mudder just stripped that right away from me and called something else out. I forgot to talk to Kyle about that.
So here's what if Kyle's thinking, he will tell you.
I let it go.
I live in San Diego, and last year the San Diego Padres hit a grand slam 4 games in a row. In the term, one of the announcers said, "Welcome to Slam Diego."
Yes, I'm familiar.
As a broadcaster on a San Diego Padres broadcast, anything that broadcaster says is property of the San Diego Padres. So all those T-shirts, all those flags and banners, and he gets paid nothing for that. He gets 0.
I understand.
He made slam.
I can't bitch about it.
That's true. That is also true.
Right. And at the end of the day, you're probably equally stoked because San Diego Padres ended up with the best record in baseball. So that was good. Oh, wait a minute.
So I think we were talking about World's Toughest Mudder.
Yep. Let's go.
So that was Electric Avenue. So you had a choice. You could do 3 electric or 2 water. We talked about the first water one. The second water obstacle was well swung. What is well swung?
Well swung, which, when they first explained well swung, I mean, we know well swung. Well swung is basically King of Swingers, but set on the ground, right? And so you had about a 5? I'll tell you what, when I walked up to it, the jump to the bar was farther than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
I think it was 6 feet, maybe?
It used to be just out of, like, if you reach your hand out, it was like 3 inches in front of you. Like you could just almost reach it.
No, this was like, you had to put a pretty good pump to get your arms out there.
Yeah. Yep.
I don't have little gator arms, but they're not the longest arms in the world. And what Kyle said at the rules briefing was that like their 6'2" guy hit the bell like 30% of the time, which I think that was Kyle just kind of being, because I talked to the guy he was talking about. Right. And he was like, he goes, that was true at first, but then we adjusted it a little bit and then we adjusted it again. So it seems like I don't know if they adjusted it in the middle of the night at all, but I gave it one shot and I didn't make it. And I was like, well, I guess I'm going to be swimming. And the cool thing was the penalty for that, which by the way, this should be a penalty all the time, was the Etch-a-Sketch, where each lap became, and as the night went on, the words got progressively longer, 3 letters, 4 letters. I think we did 5 letters one time. But yeah, so if you failed the obstacle, there was 40 Etch-a-Sketches on a table, and the guy just said, okay, like spell the word mud. And you were like,
Yep.
mud, here you go. So
I think I never hit the bell either. I think the thought with that penalty was you're just out of Arctic enema. You just also got wet here. Your hands are going to be cold. So it's going to be tough to get that, finger dexterity. It ended up not being that cold. And so that wasn't ever really a hard obstacle, but it was fun.
It was not. And I kind of liked it. Okay. Again, to show people's commitment to winning. Once we heard that was an obstacle on I guess was that Friday? We'd heard about that. Amelia went out to Target and bought an Etch-a-Sketch and actually practiced spelling words on Friday night. So
Amelia also bought she also bought a bouncy ball for training at home before.
She did buy a bouncy ball. Who else bought a bouncy ball for training at home?
Well, I did, but I'm not an elite. And you know what? I didn't really refine my technique until I was out there on the course. So I don't know if it really mattered. It didn't.
No, practice makes perfect, my friend. So, okay. So well swung. And it was, prior to this event, it had been a UK or a European only obstacle, just hadn't made its way over yet. I think it'd be fun to have it on course. Whether you hit the bell, to have to swing for the bell when it doesn't matter, to me would be fine.
Yeah.
And the other thing is I stopped trying because, when you're that wet on the course, I didn't want to, I got to a point where I didn't want to get my head wet because I at least wanted to keep my head dry.
Sure.
I understand my body's getting wet, but I didn't want to get my head. So after a while, I stopped jumping in, swimming across because I just didn't want to get watered down. You know what I mean?
Man, I could not get into Arctic enema without I got my head wet every single time, I think, sliding down that thing.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
I just kind of put my hands up and just kind of I tried to keep my hands out and then just slid in and kind of keep my head. Yeah, I never went under on that.
You're kidding. Wow.
So,
all right. Well, good for you. Okay.
So let's see.
After well swung, the Block Ness Monster.
Block Ness Monster, which again, another, I don't think they greased it, but there was definitely, do you know if they did or not for sure?
I don't think they did, but I think the oil made it all the way there.
There was a lot of carryover on that. And the way I noticed it the most was which by the way, oil and water, you think oil would float, but towards the end of the night, when I would go to push the obstacle, to help people get over, my feet were constantly slipping. It was slick on the bottom of the obstacle also, the liner of the tank or whatever you want to call it. So, as the night went on, Block Ness became one of those obstacles that I was hoping to get there when there was no one there, because I was able to jump up and get over it on my own, and so were Casey and Joe. So it's and I wanted to spend less time in water, but I can't just burn through the obstacle without helping.
Right.
So if we got there and there's people there, it'd be like, oh man, okay, let's go. And it's just even though it's world's toughest mudder and we all know what to do, it still becomes like an open wave, right? Because you got new people and say, okay, guys, we're going to push one at a time. You go first. 1, 2, 3. 3 people jump. And you're just is this a Sunday in NorCal right now? What's going on? Did you guys not just hear what we said?
I've said this before. Excuse me. I've been coughing up sand for 4 days now.
Yep.
All you have to do at Block Ness Monster is the 2 outside guys are always the ones who go. Whoever's on the outside, those 2 guys, they go. And then when you come in, you go to the middle and you just work your way out. And there's only 2 outsides. And so it's only 2 guys every single time. The people in the middle are all pushing over, but it's tough to communicate that to everybody.
So the other thing about the obstacle is that this was another chance to earn a carabiner. The rubber duckies made an appearance again, much like they did in 2019. And of course, not knowing what they're looking for, and knowing you can only turn in one, I just grabbed the first lap that they had them. I just grabbed the rubber ducky that I could.
So they said you turn in a rubber ducky you grab a rubber ducky from Block Ness, turn it in at the end of your lap, the timing tent. They will inspect it and tell you if it's whatever qualifies to get you a carabiner.
Oh, that's correct. Oh, you hung up there for a second. Okay, I got you back. That is correct. So I grabbed one, just one, because I'm like, well, and I carried it with me. I learned later to zip my pockets because I lost one at some point on a course because I think it floated out of my pocket in in some more water. But first time I brought it back, handed it to the guy, and he immediately flips it. So it's not a color thing. I learned right away it's not a color thing. He flips it over and he's like, nope. And I'm like, oh, what are you looking for? And he's like, yeah, I can't tell you that. And I was like, okay, all right. So then next time through, I'm like, I grab a handful of them and I start looking at the bottom, and it's like, and they're all identical. But I'm like, well, this one looks like it's got a little bit of a bump compared to this because they got the little squeaker toy things in them.
Right.
So I'm like, all right. So I grab that and I turn that one in, and he's like, nope. And I'm like, okay, honestly, there's nothing, right? You guys are just arbitrarily, And Jen, who was the race director in the middle of the night, who I know from other events, she's like, no, Carlo, I just restocked it. There's more out there. And I'm like, Jen,
she told me the same thing.
I wish you wouldn't lie straight to my face like this. And I'm just tired and I'm joking. And then some guy comes up and he goes, here you go. And she looks and she goes, and she realizes I see it too. And she's like, you got it. And so it was like this little round sticker, and it was kind of sparkly, like a little sparkly. Then I started thinking, well, with all the oil in there, all these stickers are going to come off. So you can't. So.
Okay, that's the only story I have heard of anyone getting anything from those stupid ducks.
Thank you.
Until you said that, I was convinced it was a whole gag. Like there was no.
That was it.
Because one of the volunteers at Blockness eventually told us like there's gold sparkles on the ones that are picked.
Yeah.
But I looked at probably over the 10 laps, probably 1,000 ducks. That's probably a lot. Between 500 ducks. And I didn't. All right.
So the next lap, I go back and I'm just like, I'm not getting out of this water without my duck. So Casey and Joe are out. They're like now waiting on dry land. Right. Because why wouldn't they at 5 a.m? And I'm just like, no. I'm taking handfuls, like sifting them, like I'm panning for gold. Just like, nope. Dude, and finally they're like, Carlo, come on. It's one carabiner. And I'm just like, you guys do. It was like, and then I was like, oh. And I just like, I'm like, they don't exist. They don't exist. I don't care. You can tell me all day long that there was a bunch of them in there. They're like 10%. 10% of them have things on it.
Oh, was that the number? 10% were supposed to be? No, there's no way. There's no way. Those stickers came off. There's no way 10%.
So anyway, that's my rubber ducky carabiner story, I redeemed 0. So yeah.
The next obstacle after Blockness Monster was Lumberjack Your Wood.
A deceptively painful obstacle, but one that again, as you do with Worlds, right? Some wonderful soul who I cannot identify because I don't know who they are was like, oh, dude, do it like this. And I was like, oh my gosh. So it's a sandbag carry. And again, like most WTMs, the sandbags became considerably lighter as the night went on, which was great. Sandbag carry up a pretty steep hill. We had what would you say? It was like, I don't know, a couple 100 yards or something.
Yeah, steep enough. Maybe the whole thing was, I don't know, 1,000 yards.
But there was
that's new one.
So then there was so Lumberjack is just the wooden bar basically you have to like climb over.
Okay, but in my mind, Lumberjack is like wood, like a tree, not physical lumber, like 2x6s made in with a point on the top.
They borrow these from Spartan, so it's the Spartan climb over obstacle basically. Right. So it's basically a 4x4 piece of wood that they put on at an angle, so it's like a diamond shape basically. Yeah. So you're not going over a flat part. You're going
or a
over
round part, even like a log. No,
like you're going over like a chevron basically. You're going over the 45 or the 90 degree angle.
Yeah.
And the rule was you had to always be in constant contact with your sandbag. So what most of us would do, throw your sandbag on top, hang onto it with one hand, get yourself up and over like your gut, and then get your legs over, pull your sandbag and go. Is that what you would do?
Yeah, every time.
Yeah. And it did two things. One, it started getting your core because you kept laying down on this like knife edge. And I'm not saying it didn't hurt for women too, but if you're a guy, it could be even a little more challenging because you like had to be careful.
You had to kind of
parts of your lower extremities went rolling over this thing, right?
You had to kind of get your weight up there and then like shift some of your weight over, and then you could get the rest of your weight over.
You didn't want to come right down, on yourself. So, but then some guy who was ahead of us at one of them was like, "No, guys, watch this," and he laid the sandbag right on top and kind of patted it, so it kind of like conformed to the and it made a nice round surface,
right?
And then you just kept your hand on it and rolled over your sandbag basically. And it took away that sharp edge.
Like a forward roll kind of thing, or like a sideways roll?
You could kind of go to the side. You could still go over the same way, but you made sure that your body was contacting. You were using the sandbag is what your body was touching when you went over.
What your crotch was touching?
Or your waistline or wherever you needed it. Yeah.
Right.
But it was just.
This would have been helpful information like 3 days ago.
I know. It made it so much more tolerable because, and there was 4 of them. You had to do that 4 times.
Yeah.
Thankfully, they made you go over them going down the hill.
Yeah.
If you had to do that and then go up the hill, that would be. Now they'll do that next year.
The first thing I thought of when I saw this was 2018 Lumberjacked, which that one you could get over by yourself at the beginning, but I don't know, halfway through the race, you needed help to get over those logs.
Yes.
And I never needed
Everybody
help.
hated it.
This one was. It had a sandbag, but I feel it was a lot easier than the Atlantic version.
It definitely was, yeah. And it wasn't as tall, I think. Those ones were taller. So then, here's the thing. Once you did that, it was kind of like, okay, like no more, that was the end of your hills. That was, then it was pretty much just flat land and you knew you had 3 obstacles to go. You could see all of them, which was kind of cool. That was kind of like a liberating part of the lap. You're like, all right, I just got to go see these guys, got to go do this, go see coach, and I'm done.
You still had 2 hard obstacles left, but it was like, okay, like
yes,
the end is close.
So you had Everest, which they, for the first time all season, they said, oh, by the way, no ropes whatsoever. So either you're really strong and you can go up to the left side and grab that rail, or you're at the mercy of the Everest Angels, which, by the way, so grateful for those guys who were there all night, as they always are. But it's just like, this is the first time that I've ever actually had to like relied on them, you know, because of my first time competing since, last time I did Worlds, there was like, 2.0 and 3.0, and it was like manageable.
Right.
So yeah, Travis Lagnus was my guy. Francis, even though there's other guys up there, I would wait a little longer just because I think Travis is such a cool guy. And I'm like, I'm waiting for my guy. I want to wait for my guy. And I did it every time. I never took the penalty. Did you take the penalty?
Never. No. I skipped it once. I used the band on it once at my last lap, but.
Yep. Me too. The penalty was basically, was it a half mile?
They said it was a mile.
It was a mile-long mini mutter course, and as we talked about, which had like a half dozen obstacles or a dozen obstacles on it.
I saw a miniature version of Mutterhorn on there. I saw a miniature. I think they had a miniature version of Everest.
They did, yeah. There was a little pit you had to go through. I think you had to crawl under. There might have been a little.
There was a crawl at the end of it. I saw people coming out of a crawl like under barbed wire. Hey guys, jump in the comments. What were the mini mutter obstacles?
Yeah,
Madrano says it's a half mile.
You did, although you know what? I almost did it once just because you got a blue headband for doing it. And I was like, and this is the only thing where when I was running with the Four Eyes guys, the only thing that we did differently as a quote unquote team or running as friends together is they always wanted to do mini mutter, and I just would do Everest, and then we'd catch up. We'd catch up because at that point you catch up back in the pit because you've only got a couple obstacles left and they're both totally doable.
Would you finish the lap? So they're doing mini mutter penalty. You're doing. Would you finish the lap before them?
Yeah. And it was an agreement. It was an agreed upon thing. I wasn't like abandoning them or anything.
Sure.
And I kept trying to get them to do it. I'm like, you guys, it's really easy. But these guys, they're killing it. But they were just like, nope, we're cool.
The Everest Angels, if guys don't know, they're, I don't know what, 6 guys that their race, their world's toughest mutter is they start with everybody else. Everyone starts at the same time. But when they get to Everest, they stop. They go to the top of Everest and they wait. And they're there literally all night long helping people up Everest. And I can't imagine that. It makes no sense. They paid $500 just like you or I did to run that race. and they are sacrificing their race just to help. Like, I could not have got 50 miles without them. I literally could not.
Right.
Those guys should not be paying for their raises. There should be a community. Tough Mudder shouldn't be paying for it. It should be, because Tough Mudder's not benefiting. The community is benefiting. I'm benefiting. You're benefiting. There should be some kind of GoFundMe. I don't know who can set it up or how to run it, but they should not be paying for their races or for their World's Toughest Mudder.
Yeah.
They definitely shouldn't be buying their own beers like at the bar crawl. Like, that's
exactly. And that, of course, I mean, talking about the Everest Angels, and those guys have now kind of spawned again, because Tough Mudder keeps, switching things around. We talked about, taking lower support beams off of certain obstacles. The next obstacle after Everest was Mudderhorn. And the one thing that I was really excited about this year, and Amelia, we talked about it at length at our house, was I was finally at a point strength-wise where I could grab that little 2x4 on Mudderhorn, muscle myself up, swing my leg up, and get up Mudderhorn. And of course, for Worlds, they took that 2x4 off the obstacle. So either you were just really tall and can jump and grab the net, which that's like 8 feet. Like that was a pretty healthy jump. Or thankfully, you had the Chris Arandas, the Jay Mazza, Carlene, what's that guy's name? Eric? Carlene, something like that. I forget. The Canadian guy was there. There was I don't know what they have a name for themselves.
the Men of Mudderhorn.
What is it?
The Men of Mudderhorn.
Are you making that up?
No, Karen Lechner's given it to me in the comments, but
Okay, there it is. Is that what they call themselves? The Men of Mudderhorn?
I think so. And Kyle said that too.
Well, bless them, because those guys gave up their quads and their shoulders. Because basically there was the way you'd work, you have two guys side by side. Right leg goes on one guy's quad. Left leg goes on the other guy's shoulder. Then the dude grabs your right leg again and just pushes you up, and you grab and go.
Jay Mazza he's like 3 steps. He's like one step one. He's like points to his like upper leg. Step 2, and he like taps the other guy's shoulder.
Yep.
And step 3, put your foot flat so we can push you up. And it worked. It was a good system. Did you see the pictures of their shoulders the next day?
I did.
They looked like hamburger.
And I saw Chris Aranda at the brunch, and he showed me.
It was terrible. It was the Everest guys, their arms, their forearm. Because for Everest, you run up, and some people would, instead of grabbing the hand like you're supposed to, they grab the forearm, and it slides down. And so
or
that
your
like
thumb.
Yeah, chafing. Those guys' forearms and hands are just trashed, and I'm sure their shoulders and upper back. And then these other guys at Mudderhorn, their quads, their shoulders, like it was. You know how sometimes we talk to our friends, like tell them about World's Toughest Mudder, and they look at us like we have 2 heads. Like, why would you do that? And these guys at Mudderhorn and Everest, I feel the exact same way. I'm like, I can't. It's such a level of sacrifice that I look forward to running the race every year. These guys look forward to helping other people hit their goals all year long. I don't understand it. All I know is I'm grateful for it and I appreciate it, and I don't know how to convey that accurately to those guys. It's an amazing, amazing thing they do.
I think you just did. But yeah, so Mudderhorn, of course, is Mudderhorn, and although I do feel like maybe it's just me, but I do feel like the netting on the way down was a little tighter against the obstacle than it had been before. Maybe not. Because it just seemed like I was a little more pressed against it, which is fine. I don't want to go the opposite way. But yeah, Mudderhorn was Mudderhorn, and I never minded doing it because I knew that was pretty much the end of the lap, and so that was always refreshing, And then of course the last obstacle, you came around the corner. First off, they called it Coach's Canal. So you had Coach perched on a stage underneath Mudderhorn doing his DJ music, which to me sounded like pretty much the same song all night long, but I'm sure he was switching it up. But I think the other unsung hero, I didn't catch the guy's name. I'm sure people in the community do, but it was Coach's like childhood buddy from back home. That giant, he was like Darth Vader sized dude who was just dancing. He's like the dude from the Specials or the dude from the Mighty Mighty Boss Tones. Those ska bands that had all those different guys on stage, and each band had one guy whose job it was just to dance. Like that was that guy. He's the dude from the Specials who's just like he's skanking, just doing his thing.
Karen Lechner says his name is Anthony. He's in the group now. So he might hear Yeah.
Well, bless you, Anthony. He had some energy.
The first time I came through, I was like, oh, that's cool. Like I thought he was like a pit crew guy or someone just hanging out. And then like the next time I came through, I'm like, oh, that guy's still there. And then like after like 20 hours, I'm like, oh my gosh, I couldn't do that.
Wait a minute. Hold on. Yeah, I had met him before, so I kind of knew who he was, but I didn't know he was going to be there all night.
Yeah.
So, and I will say this. It was probably, and again, we've all been up for 24 hours, including Coach, but like, as energetic and positive and amazing as Coach is, on his face at like 9 a.m., his face looked like someone who'd been up for 30 hours. He was still smiling and being Coach, but like you can't hide everything, right? So I'm like, yep, I've been there, dude.
You talk about Coach playing the same song over and over again. He started to use the same. He's like, you got to smile. It's a chemical reaction. Like, and then other people will see you smile and they'll smile back. And I heard that like 3 times, I think, through the night. So I feel like he kind of had his script going there.
Yep.
And then after.
So then Coach's Canal is basically birth canal.
Yeah. Birth canal with
which by the way, as long as you went to the far right of either one, you blew through there. But that obstacle's never really been,
If you went to the far right of the left side, you went right next to the speakers.
You did go past the speaker. Once I learned about the far right of the far right, I was like, oh, this is much better.
That was the way.
Because my eardrum definitely felt that a couple times, and I was like, oh, I don't like that part of it. So that's a good point. That's a great detail to point out, because that was definitely how it was.
Jeff Madrano thought that Anthony was Coach's bouncer.
Oh, that'll work too. Of course, who's going to step to Coach? Come on.
Yeah, he doesn't need a bouncer. Of all of us.
That guy will power snatch you or whatever. It's another CrossFit term.
Tell me about, after you came out of Coach's Canal, the final time, that run or the walk, or what happened between then and the finish line? How'd you finish?
Yeah, so you come out and you basically, I saw Dave Didier. He was there volunteering, so I'd always run into him, and he just kind of gave you a high five and how's it going? Yeah, you make a left turn, and then it's like, I don't know, what is it? Less than a quarter mile, maybe. I remember my last lap. Even laps when we were walking, you'd walk, but then, you get within like 50 yards, and you're like, okay, guys, we need to run now. Because we can't come around that corner. We can't come around that corner walking.
There's like a turn. You had to start right before that turn. We've been running the whole way.
You got, even though everyone can totally see you from the pit, it's like, nope. Once you made that turn, you're like, and I'm running. No one knows a thing. As far as you knew, I just ran 5 miles. So yeah, knowing that I'm going to see Kyle and Sean, and Jason was out there, of course. And Kyle McLaughlin was there for a lot of the laps that I finished, it seemed. That was it. It was just get past the timing mats before you drop. And then, that last lap, I didn't realize, like I said, I didn't realize that I was like suffering from heat stroke until a little bit later, but I kind of finished and paused for a second, and then actually kind of went down to my hands and knees. And then, and I wasn't being dramatic. I just actually like needed to go down to my hands and knees at that moment, and just kind of like, oh, okay, I'm going to just sit here for a minute. And I think if I remember how I feel then, now I know why I kind of decided, okay, that's good, I'm done. But of course, Monday morning quarterbacking, I'm like, oh, I could have just taken off some layers and gone back out. But who knows? But how about you? You gotta be emotional. This is your 50. You hadn't gotten 50 before.
Yeah, I've been chasing it for like 6 years, and I was looking at doing the math, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna make it, and like I'd saved 2 bands up, and I used them on Everest and Mutterhorn, and then I crawled through Coach's Canal. And you had that last stretch, like, whatever. And so you're running straight for a while, and then you're going to turn right. And like the second I got out through, like I'm still on my hands and knees at Coach's Canal, and I'm standing up, and I'm like, like, oh my God.
Because you know you're going to make it. Yes.
And like you kind of feel the tears like right behind the eye, and you're like,
100%.
And you jog it in, and it was I had sunglasses on, and I crossed the finish line. I kept them on as long as I could, because I was crying like a baby underneath there. And Clinton gave me a hug and gave me my 50-mile bib, and my team was waiting for me.
Oh, Clinton
got a picture, and it was great. It was the best finish line I've ever crossed.
Clinton said something. There's something to be said about like when just their energy when you cross the finish line is always amazing, but the fact that we're fortunate enough to where we kind of know Sean and Clinton to a point where they know us, right? Dare I call them our friends? But when you come around the corner to finish and they see you and they're like calling you out by name and they're like, oh, Clinton said something after one of the laps and it was so great because I was by myself still. It was during the lap that I was not having a good time at all. And he said something like, he's like, there should be a Squid Game challenge where you see Carlos smile and the goal is you're not allowed to smile back because ain't nobody can resist that guy's smile or something like that. And I just thought, and it was just so perfect because it's like kind of it's just what you need at that moment. That kind of like positive reinforcement. It's just like, they're just so great, those guys. And that's kind of the bummer going into the off season. Oh, the off season only lasts like a month. Not even that. Shoot. There's December and January events. Never mind. So
I was so happy to see Clinton get that award. I think it's called the Everest Award at brunch the next day. Or maybe it was the Hall of Fame.
Dude, I teared up like 3 times during the brunch.
Yeah.
What was going on?
It was a lot of dust, a lot of sand still in the air, maybe.
A lot of sand still in the air. Watching Kyle get choked up got me a little bit. The Clinton thing absolutely got me a little bit. So yeah. Oh, the video they should go. Hey, here's the 2021 with Batras and his kids. Running
crossing. Okay. So talk about what they showed with Batras and his kids.
Yeah, so that home stretch to the finish line we were talking about, he has these 2 adorable children, little towhead kid, and you can say that, right? That's not inoffensive.
It's blonde, yeah, I think so.
Little super white-haired kid, and then the other boy who's equally as cute. But they kind of like, as he's going down that final stretch, they come running out to him, and they're shooting from behind him, which is so amazing. And then the kids just kind of like get alongside him and he grabs their hands and their little legs and they all run.
And they are so excited for their dad. They're throwing their hands up in the air. And,
right? Like that uncontrollable little kid. They don't
just
even
joy.
Whatever.
They have no idea what's going on, but there's something good is happening with their dad.
They're just happy dad's back. They haven't seen him. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, and he's not suffering. And he crosses the finish line and he collapses and they collapse on top of him and hug. And I was just, especially as a father, you're just like, I was like, what just happened?
Yeah.
Why? Stop it. Stop doing that to me.
Yep.
Yeah, 100%. That was beautiful. Is that online?
So I talked to Kyle this morning. I was like, hey, they're going to put that video up anywhere? And they're working, there's some music issues, but they're working on that and then they're going to try and get it up soon. So
okay. Because it was like, even though I'm nowhere to be seen in the video, I still like it.
Yeah. What do you think, what are some things that Tough Mudder nailed they did really, really well this year?
Oh, you know what? As much as we kind of like, we're like meh about the idea. I liked the combination of the obstacles. I thought it was well done. I thought early on, after looking at the map for the first time, like the idea that there's basically only 4 obstacles, the first part of the course. I thought that was something I wasn't going to like, but it was like, it wasn't too bad. So I enjoyed that. Once you figured out how to do it and not overheat, which I still almost overheated that last lap because I'm an idiot and didn't take any layers off. But what do you think?
I'm kind of looking through rose-colored glasses, but because it was my best, personally, like the best race I've run, and so
be proud, dude. Be
everything.
Proud.
I am. I'm very proud. Like it's been like 6 years, man, and like I had 15 miles my first year. Like that's terrible. Terrible.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
When you came home and you told your wife, was she like, "Cool"?
No, she was happy for me. I told her on the phone.
Not
before.
everybody gets it, you know.
Not everyone gets it. No. My wife's a good sport, and she knows like I wanted 50 for a long time. Like it's not like a secret. She was very happy for me.
I sent the little finish video that Ann Clifford took for me when I came in and collapsed to my little like family group text.
Right.
And nobody responded except my daughter, and she was just like, "I still don't understand why you do this stuff, but congratulations." I was like, "Thanks, sis." Anyway,
so I think it would have been. So things that did great. I think I love the mashup idea. I think the main reason, the main highlight of all of this is the obstacles, right? Like that's why we do it instead of running a trail run. And I think the mashup idea was great. I think I think that's something that could even continue year to year, right? Like come up with new obstacles. Tough Mudder comes up with new obstacles every year, and then you mash them up. Some things that I think they could have improved. Jeff Andronis says also volunteers were awesome. They were great.
And I think they definitely did a good job of recognizing what didn't work. Like they found the problem with the carabiner, the problem with and they addressed that. You know, I think that's kind of an important thing because you don't want something that's going to threaten the integrity of the race.
Yeah.
And so I think they did a good job of
you're talking about the carabiner stuff from 2019 coming back to versus this year. And I think it was good. Like this year there was the open category where you could do the carabiner, and even in the open category it wasn't like it was all loosey goosey. Like it was pretty structured. Yeah. But then if you were doing contender or elite contender, you could not use those carabiners. Like you had a very strict race rules. The pit setup, someone said in the comments, I think it was Renee, was really good. I was an open category, so I had to wait till all the elite contenders, all the contenders, all the holy grail, and then I could pick my pit spot. And I had probably my second or third best pit spot I've ever had. Nice. So I mean, it was great. Fred Giron wants to talk about the hot sauce. Upset a lot of stomachs. Yeah, we talked about it earlier, Fred. You're not wrong. It messed me up for like the first mile and a half. But
like I said, after my second time doing it, I came back and I was just like, I'm not doing that again. And then I came back through that third time and I was just like, fine, but I'm not doing it again. So that was it. I did it 3 times and I was like, actually, and we're talking about that. Remember the next thing they moved to, sorry to kind of get off subject.
Oh, no. With carabiners, go for it.
The next carabiner thing they moved to was there was that giant WTM made of concrete where, by the way, I'm going to show you. So the idea was they had put carabiners inside these 3 big block letter WTMs made out of concrete.
And they're like half sticking out. Like you can see them, kind of, it's not like you're like,
and they gave you like, I don't know what the tool was.
They said they were going to give you a hammer and all you could use was the hammer. And
there was no hammer.
It was a screw. Like it's like a 5-inch screw. You put your thumb on.
Leg bolt. It was like a leg bolt, basically. The funny thing was, I was over trying to turn in one of my rubber duckies one point, and we hear this noise. Some dude just came over and and this is before you were supposed to do it, grabbed the T and just went, bam, like lifted it up and threw it down and shattered it in like 3 pieces. And they're like, whoa, what are you doing? You can't do that yet. And he was like, oh, sorry. And then he ran.
Like you have like a giant license plate on your back, man. Like we know who did it. Like you can't get away.
So he just crushed the thing and then took off. So and dude, I was watching people when I was coming over to get my regular rubber wristband,
right?
Just trying to grind. Some guy on course was like, I spent an hour there getting the carabiner, and in my head I was like, bro, it's for 1 carabiner. Like,
yeah, no,
you're gonna get some free ones at the brunch.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm like.
So they had the hot sauce first, and then they stopped the hot sauce, and they introduced the carabiner or the concrete thing.
Yeah, I think it was.
So I went over there.
8-hour increments.
Yeah.
So it was 8 hours of hot sauce, 8 hours of the thing I didn't do, and then the last one, which I did do once because I only needed 1 more carabiner, and I would have done it more if I needed it. Was you had to do a plank for a minute with a plastic spoon in your mouth with an egg at the end of the spoon, and you just couldn't drop the egg for the minute. And that was actually, I mean, my leg shook a little bit because it was later in the race. It was the final 8 hours.
Yeah.
But I would have done that each time if I still needed a carabiner. So
yeah,
that wasn't too bad.
I did the planking once, and I said I wanted to do the concrete thing once, and I got the thing, and I was like, this isn't a hammer. And I go over there and I'm like, this is stupid. I was like literally 10 seconds. I was like, nope, I'm done. Like, give him the screw and I'm out of there. That was a terrible one.
Yeah.
Jeff Madrano says they masterfully used the terrain, so we got a lot of climbing in. They did. There was a lot of climbing on sand.
Yes, that I was concerned about how much how much loose sand there was going to be, and I mean, because it got to a point when you were in that stuff, like even if you were still able to run, there just wasn't a big. I mean, unless you were trying to get 75 or something, there just wasn't a lot of benefit for the extra energy you were exerting to run in that soft sand like that.
Yeah.
So I just did a lot of power hiking at that point. So
another bonus, another good thing from the event, a free Darius Rucker concert.
I remember at one point I was like, how come he's not playing anymore? And because like it's 1 a.m, dude.
Concerts don't go 24 hours.
Oh, right. He only plays for like by 90 minutes, 2 hours. My bad.
That's funny.
So he was done by midnight.
Wrapping up, what are your plans for 2022?
2022 for World's Toughest Mudder?
Yeah. What do you think about Pensacola? What are you doing?
I don't know the area. I've already talked to people who have been there. There's people are messaging me about it. By the way, I love you all. I don't want to hear about the new venue yet. I'm going to take a little time and relax. But yes, it's from what Kyle swears. He's like, it's not a sandy course. He's like, but there's definitely, it's going to be very muddy. It's clay, sticky. And the word that was used is the terrain there. I don't know a whole lot about it, but the terrain there, he said, would have the potential to have a cliff type obstacle, which I'm like, you jump in a sinkhole? It's Florida. But evidently there's like a big crater there or something. Like, I don't know the area. I'm sure people are going to yell in the comments, but yeah, the word cliff was used. Like, so
that's one thing I heard.
But I'll be there and I'm going to run. I'm assuming that was WTM miles from 2019, 2020, was that used towards contender status? Like, will your 50 miler get you contender status next year at Worlds?
Oh, I don't know.
Or are they going to make us do like a bunch of those?
You probably have to run toughest mudder and get so many miles or an infinity kind of thing. I don't know. That's a great question.
I mean, if it got me into OCRWC.
Okay,
anyway.
Here's the thing. Do you want contender status if it means you can't take the bypass?
You know what? I do. And the reason I do is because there's always a part of me that like wants to see how I could do if I really push as far as age group goes. Right. The bummer is I turned 50 in March. And I was looking at the guys in the group. Like I was literally going around like Joe Perry. Hey Joe, how old are you? He's like 53. So I'm like looking at the guys who are going to be in that age group, and I was like, damn it.
Right.
So, but part of me like wants to like see where I could do, like if I'm ever think I'm possible of doing some cool age group stuff.
Yeah.
And you can't do that if you're not a contender. So
yeah, the only way to qualify for the age group podium is to run in the contender division. So yeah, that's cool.
So, but then part of me is like, I don't know. We'll see. I've got a year to figure it out, dude.
Have you thought about mileage goals for next year?
I have not. Because here's the deal. I have, of course, because I want to do this, I want to do that. But as we've learned, new venues, you have
no idea. Totally.
It's fine to say like, I'm going to try to get 75, but it's like, I have no idea. Great like, point. I think a lot of us just did the whole Vegas Laughlin, like, okay, it's going to be similar, so I should probably be able to whatever. But with a brand new venue like that, it's kind of hard to really, and it's, dude, come on, we've got 11 months or 12 months.
Oh, and in the comments, Ann says 75 miles plus for males gets you contender status. So,
well, that sucks. I should have ran 20 more miles. Oh, well, that's.
I think so. I have earned contender status one time, and that was at toughest mudder, and that's an easier nut to crack, I think. Like it's still hard, but and miles per hour, it's hot. It was like, I think 25 in 8 hours, which is a 75 mile pace.
Yep.
But that's a lot easier to do 25 than it is to do 75.
I earned it in 2016 because of my 50 in 2015 because that was the first year they did contender status.
Right.
And there was no toughest mudder or to have results from. So times are changing, Will Hicks.
Yeah, they keeps passing. Carlo, any last thoughts? What do you think, man? Overall, how was the whole weekend? Everything else, community.
Oh man, you know what? I couldn't have asked honestly for a better weekend. I was surrounded by great people, and even though we had the most sketchiest Airbnb I've ever stayed in my life, good old Bullhead City.
Weren't you like on the water?
What's that?
Weren't you on the water?
Yeah, that picture that I posted about our little view from that was very selective the way I chose that photo. Like if I had flipped around 180 and took a picture, you guys would have been like, get out of there. Yeah, we stayed at a really interesting spot, man. I'll tell you about it sometime. But no, in the end, everything was great. And I liked it being there. I liked that. I loved having the brunch and the little pub gathering all in the same place.
Sure.
I forgot how horrible it is to be inside a casino with cigarette smoke. But other than that, yeah, I got nothing to complain about.
All right. I don't know. I think we covered everything, man. In the comments, this will be available on World's Toughest Podcast soon. All right. Any last thoughts, last comments before we go? Carlo, how can people follow you on social media?
They can follow me on Instagram at Carlo with no S with underscores in between each word. That's how you can follow me.
Follow World's Toughest Podcast on Instagram. Follow the OCR Report on Instagram. And, you know what you should do? If you really like Carlo, you should leave a review on Apple Podcasts or go to lovethepodcast.com/tough. Carlo,
what should they rate it?
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars. 5 stars.
Where is she?
5 stars.
5 stars.
There she is. Oh,
5 stars.
Love me some Rhea Coble.
Sue Harvey Brown.
I told you, I stepped all over that.
No,
Man, I am not good at this.
You heard Sue Harvey Brown. You thought Sue Harvey Brown was Rhea.
God dang it.
Anyway.
Well, she's adorable too, so that's okay.
All right, guys. We will talk to you soon. Go leave Carlo a review. He'll read it on a future episode. And it was a great weekend. It was fun.
Word for word. I will read it word for word. That's what we're going to do.
So if you want Carlo to say something specific, leave it in a review on Apple Podcasts.
Oh, here we go, buddy.
All right. I'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.
Special thanks to Carlo Piscitello, as always. Well done, Carlo. If you guys want to hear those sessions live as they happen, that one was in the World's Toughest Mudder community group. You should be a member of that if you're going to run World's Toughest Mudder. It's on Facebook. Also, you should subscribe to our YouTube page, youtube.com/theOCR Report. I will talk with you soon. Be sure to leave a review so Carlo can read it to you. If there's anything you want Carlo to say, now's your chance. Apple Podcasts, the purple podcast button, lovethepodcast.com/tough. Either one will work. I will talk with you soon. What a great, great weekend. I hope you were there. If not, make sure you are planning to be in Pensacola 2022. Go spend time with someone you love. You see that? All right.
I don't have eyeballs. I just have Will's room.
Yo, hey, third person, jump in with some comments. Hang on. I'm literally on the Facebook page and I don't see us. So no, we got it. All right. I'm going to try and do this again.
Okay.
All right, bye. Oh, hang on. Jessica Dominic reacted to your live video in World's Toughest Mudder 2021. Oh, I'm in the wrong World's Toughest Mudder group. Hey,
right.
Hey, you guys, we're going to the other World's. Hey, no. Stop joining. Stop joining. Stop joining. There's 6 now. We're going to the big group. This is the small group. We're going to the big group. All right. Meet us over there in like 30 seconds. We'll see you in a sec. Love you, miss you. All right, stop joining. That's 7. Hey, 7 people. Go to the other one. Go to the main group. We'll see you in a sec. I'm hanging up now. Bye. 8, other room. Go to the big room. Go to the main room.
Dude.
I'm hanging up.